and by electronic means. Council members and the public may participate by either method. Any members joining electronically are reminded to enable their video to confirm quorum. The meeting is being live streamed on the city's website and YouTube, and meeting progress will be updated regularly on X at @VanCityClerk. In case of an emergency requiring evacuation, there are 2 exits located beyond the glass doors and to the left. If the glass doors are blocked, please use one of the 4 additional exits within the chamber. Do not use the elevator. Use the stairs instead. If you need mobility assistance, remain where you are and security staff will guide you to a safe location. A defibrillator is available at the end of the hallway outside the chamber. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and we thank them for having cared for this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we continue to build this great city together. I'll also recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver's team members who work hard every day to help make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. Clerk, may we please have roll call?
Yes, Mayor Sim has a leave of absence for civic business for the entire meeting. Councillor Kirby-Young, not present. Councillor Dominato, not present. Councillor Bly has a leave of absence for civic business for the entire meeting. Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague has a leave of absence for personal reasons for the entire meeting. Acting Mayor Klassen is in the chair. Councillor Meisner.
Present.
Councillor Joe.
Present.
Councillor Orr. Councillor Maloney. You have quorum, Acting Mayor Klassen.
Thank you very much. I have a few announcements to make. The public may speak in person or by phone, or may submit written comments to Mayor and Council. Speakers may only speak once and will have up to 5 minutes to comment on the merits of the application. Please state whether you support or oppose the application and if you are a Vancouver resident. Those representing 4 or more individuals or groups, including themselves, may speak for up to 8 minutes. Each person being represented must confirm their name and presence in person or by phone and may not speak separately. Please follow the live stream or at @VanCityClerk on X to track meeting progress and to know when it is your turn to speak is approaching. Please note the live stream has a slight delay. Written comments can be submitted through Mayor and Council public hearing feedback form on the city's website and linked on X. If you pre-registered with the presentation, say next to have the clerk advance your slides. A reminder, at public hearings, Council acts as a quasi-judicial body and must focus solely on the merits of the rezoning or the heritage application. Members may ask clarifying questions of staff or speakers, including the applicant, but should reserve debate until after speakers list has closed. After hearing from speakers, Council may 1. Approve the application in principle. 2. Approve the application in principle with amendments. 3. Refuse the application, or 4. Refer the application to staff for further consideration. After the public hearing on March 10th, 2026, Council heard the staff presentation, asked questions to staff, and heard up to public speaker number 38. We'll now continue hearing from the public. Any speakers in the Council chamber, please come forward to the speaker podium on the left when it's your turn. The podium height can be adjusted using the controls on the right-hand side. Phone-in speakers will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Speakers will have up to 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the application being considered. Our next registered speaker is speaker number 39, Allison Beely. Allison, I'm going to see if you're on the line.
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Allison Beely. I've been a renter in Vancouver for 40 years. I'm opposed to the ODP plan as proposed. I'm in complete agreement with the letter to the city that you've all read, the letter signed by the 30 Metro Vancouver region-based urbanists, urban planners, architects, UBC, SFU academics, most with decades of experience. I ask that you take their comments as seriously as I do, as many Vancouverites do. I heard one speaker refer to the letter by the 30 experts as retired in a dismissive tone. Some of us would see this experience as something to be respected. The 5 points raised by the 30. Number 1, questionable population and unit projection methodology. The development industry has too much involvement in decision making. Number 2, excessive development without affordability. We have built more housing than other cities, yet remain the least affordable city in Canada. Too much of what has been built already not suitable for families, and most rents not affordable by medium income earners. The number of people facing eviction is heartbreaking, and the renter protections do little to compensate for the anxiety and feeling of loss these people are enduring. Number 3, inadequate infrastructure, parks, recreation, schools, and amenities. Can we trust that the development in compliance with this ODP will guarantee adequate infrastructure and parks with open spaces for children to play? Can we trust there will be enough school space? Many already at or above capacity, and children are having to be transported to schools outside their neighborhoods. And yet the VSP plans to close or have closed schools and seek to lease out portions of school lands. Number 4, loss of participatory planning, neighborhood contacts, and transparent approvals process. I have heard some confusing language around this in the presentation and question period. I'm sure others are confused as well. Public hearing will only be allowed where will only be allowed where an application does not fit the ODP. It's not clear how the ODP will allow for continued public engagement. 5, excessive literal implementation of provincial mandates. I question the need to ramp up development to push for greater and greater density in every neighborhood. We do have dense, vibrant neighborhoods with people of all ages and incomes, renters and homeowners. For example, Kitts, Mount Pleasant. Yes, Vancouver is growing, but surely we can accommodate growth in various neighborhoods in ways that respect and enhance existing neighborhoods without obliterating them. We should consider existing businesses in our neighborhood high street rather than proposing new shopping areas. I don't understand the reasoning behind the proposed villages. New buildings on our high street should have more small commercial spaces, not the large ones favored by developers. The rent's so high that only large chain stores can afford them. It doesn't make for the village feel of a neighborhood high street. You might remember the city once talked of being a green city, talked of gentle densification. Now we've abandoned green demolition, houses crushed in a matter of hours. There is no longer any pretense of gentle densification. The city now seeks to make way for the massive development targets, and staff have said this is not rezoning. The plan is aspirational, all while reducing the possibility of public engagement. I am saddened by the continued disregard for those of us who live here, who've made homes here, who connect with and contribute to our communities. The city has said neighborhood plans are now redundant in favor of a broad brush approach and seeks to redesign the city as clusters of building types with high-rises the only option. This one-size-fits-all plan does not respect those who live here, those who love their neighborhoods, and yes, I mean not only their own neighborhoods. I ask you to think of the neighborhoods you live in or visit, whether to your favorite cafe, restaurant, or park, whatever. Think about why you think it's a great neighborhood. Will a sea of high-rises make it a better neighborhood? With new buildings built out to the sidewalk, we will see a significantly reduced tree canopy. My first home in Vancouver was in the West End. Even with high-rises, because of the setbacks required, there were many, many trees. You never felt surrounded by or dwarfed by high-rises. Why not build more low-rise courtyard-style buildings, including co-ops? Developments like Arbutus Walk are very livable and even allow for mature shade trees. This is what we should be aspiring to, not concrete towers stacking up the maximum number of people possible. It seems livability is no longer given serious consideration. Density and growth are the new buzzwords. Many of us in different neighborhoods feel Vancouver is being erased before our eyes. One might think the plan was for a city where none already existed.
Speaker,
we can and should do better. I ask you to reject the ODP as put forward.
Thanks very much.
Done.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Speaker number 40 is David Pickle. Pickell. David, are you there?
Speaker 40 is not on the line.
Okay. Our next speaker is 41, Caitlyn Stockwell.
Hi, good evening, Council. My name's Caitlyn Stockwell. I'm a Vancouver resident, and and I'm calling in support of the adoption of the interim official development plan. We are here because adopting a citywide plan that plans for Vancouver's housing needs over the 20 years is provincially required. It shouldn't have taken us this long to get here. Citywide planning that sets out how growth will occur in a thoughtful and considered way that provides predictability for residents and contributes to complete and walkable neighborhoods is key for city vibrancy and for meeting the city's climate emergent action plan targets. We are in a housing crisis, and reducing the number of public hearings, particularly where there has been extensive public input on the Vancouver plan that forms the majority of this plan, is a small positive step forward that can save time and money in delivering much-needed new housing. It can also provide more predictability for Vancouver residents regarding what is planned for the future of their neighborhoods. A larger citywide plan can help us plan for growth and new development in a way that doesn't leave people and communities behind. However, as you've heard from other speakers, there's room for improvement to the ODP that I urge Council to consider as it takes steps to implement and update this high-level plan. It's a provincial requirement under Bill 18 that the ODP identify the location of present and proposed public facilities and parks. It is also a requirement under Bill 18 that Council consider the plan in conjunction with its financial planning. It would be helpful to see in the plan how community centres, including the provision of new facilities, will keep pace with population growth and how this will be funded over time. Right now, there are only high-level references in the plan to community centre upgrades, but not to any new facilities. Also, while there is a map showing the location of projected future parks, it would be helpful to know how the number and location of new parks have been identified. Is it a response to the distance it will take people in the city to get to park areas? Is it an assessment of the amount of park area that should be provided per capita? I note that 1.1 hectares of parkland per capita has been identified as a target in the past in Vancouver's park provision study in 2018. Additionally, given that it's a requirement under Bill 18 that the ODP as a citywide plan have policies for affordable housing, the ODP is an opportunity to set out how the city's targets for social and below market housing can be tracked equitably and delivered across neighborhoods. While the city's housing strategy provides for citywide targets, this could be spelled out in the ODP, and I think this would help for public transparency as well, just to have this all in one plan and included in the ODP. Overall, I'm in favor of a long overdue small step that sets out a high-level plan for delivering housing needs over the next 30 years in a way that creates walkable neighborhoods and provides more planning certainty for residents and housing providers. However, I urge Council to use this citywide planning requirement as an opportunity to make sure that we are planning for the delivery of amenities, particularly community centres that are used by people of all income levels throughout the city and are particularly important for low-income residents as places of recreation and connection. This requires identifying how the city's financial planning for community centres and public facilities will keep up with citywide growth. It would also be prudent for Council to identify how the plan will deliver social housing targets equitably across the city. While some of this information is dealt with in local plans, it would increase transparency and accountability to have this spelled out in a citywide statutory plan. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Our next speaker is Ned J. Speaker for
Okay. Hello. I'm speaking on behalf of the Riley Park South Cambie Advisory Group, which was originally established by City Council in 2005 under the City Plan Program to assist in implementing the community vision and serve as a credible watchdog over future area planning. The RPSC-AG continues to be recognized for our strong institutional history, and it is in the watchdog role that we address you today in regard to the proposed official development plan. We are opposed to this ODP for reasons too numerous to present in detail at this public hearing. Fortunately, the Housing Reset Group of distinguished urbanists has done so in their wise and informative public letter, which we assume you have all read and considered. Among the most disturbing of the points they elucidate is the faulty and prejudicial sourcing of demographic projections that form much of the basis for this plan. We also share their concern over the loss of participatory planning, neighborhood context, and transparent approval process. We are dismayed by the lack of community involvement in producing it, especially when compared to the comprehensive and wide-reaching city plan community visions process and the creation of the Little Mountain Housing Context Statement and the early phases of Cambie Corridor planning, during which the RPS-CAG worked closely and constructively with planners familiar with the area. And two, the disappointing but sadly predictable generic prescriptions for our neighborhoods resulting from this defective real estate industry-dominated process, in which no effort was made to benefit from local knowledge, of which there is an abundance in RPSC. RPSC is not made up of so-called neighborhood types, nor should it ever be so. Vancouver is a city of neighborhoods, and RPSC is composed of some of our city's most unique and historic. Successful city building requires that planners, residents, and other city stakeholders work closely together to study, consider, and determine where certain new forms of development would or would not be suitable. That has not yet been the case. For example, as early as 2007, we requested a comprehensive neighborhood center planning process for Main Street, which could have been conducted through a city plan program. That has not occurred, and under this ODP with its one-size-fits-all prescription, that will not happen. Further, we are alarmed and disappointed by the emphasis this ODP places on excessive development without measures to ensure a commensurate increase in public amenities, infrastructure, and housing affordability. The latter is particularly concerning to us since it has become abundantly clear that housing cost, not supply, is and will continue to be our city's overriding concern. Yet this ODP provides no incentives for retaining or providing through home renovation the most affordable type of market housing now found in RPSC, rental secondary suites in existing and mostly older detached houses. On the contrary, it incentivizes the loss of such homes and their replacement with less affordable options. If approved, this ODP will function as a tool for municipally and provincially sponsored gentrification. We do not need any more of that in Riley Park, South Cambie. We therefore join with the Housing Reset Group and numerous other civic organizations and individuals to call upon you to withdraw this failed attempt at an official development plan and refer it back to staff for reconsideration through a democratic, participatory planning process that prioritizes planning for a livable, affordable city of neighborhoods with a truly sustainable future. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for calling in. Speaker 42 is Richard Campbell.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Council. My name is Richard Campbell, and I've been a Vancouver resident for, probably about 40 years now. And, my position is not confused, but complicated regarding this plan. As a lot of speakers have mentioned, it certainly needs a lot of work, especially regarding affordability and parks and nature, which is what I'm going to talk about. So I think regardless of whether you approve it or not, there's really some foundational issues that need to be, addressed over the next few years to make sure we actually meet the objectives of the plan and more broadly, the objectives and of Vancouver residents and future Vancouver residents. So I'm going to focus on the 100-year ecological vision and the lack of it in the ODP. As I probably said to you about a year ago, I was very pleased to see the 100-year ecological vision in the Vancouver plan. And as you know, nature is essential to people's health and well-being as well as the Vancouver economy. And not surprisingly, it's very popular with about 95% percent of this support. I would encourage you to consider adding that back into the official development plan, and then just doing some work in going forward just to make sure it's consistent with the rest of the plan. And actually, there's broad, support for it. One of the things I've encountered, it seems like there was a few groups that have been working on stream restoration that they knew about the plan, but the vast majority of people and organizations that I've talked to that are interested in nature never heard about the ecological vision. And I think if you went and did a more broader consultation on nature and the city and what people like to see, I think you could go a lot further than what's in the plan. Specifically in the vision, I was especially excited to see around 13 potential restored waterways around the city of the streams that have been buried for pipes. Unfortunately, the ODP, I'm not even sure how long the vision is for, but it looks like it only includes the restoring of 2 or 3 streams, which is really not that much. The ecological network in the ODP looks like it mainly follows streets with blue-green features that won't likely include any surface water except when it rains. And furthermore, Vancouver has reshaped its relationship to nature and restored its ecological health. Now, it's hard to make the case that will be the case if streams are not restored and wetlands, as they are essential to for salmon, and salmon is a keystone species that has been really hard hit by urbanization all around the mainland, but especially in Vancouver. A huge advantage of a 100-year or longer vision is pretty much everything in the city, buildings, bridges, roads, utilities, everything else will have to be replaced within that 100 years at a huge expense. So if we plan for 100 years and come up with what the city wants to look like, we can essentially start with a blank slate, creating the future that we really want, including restoring streams and the hydrology that staff has been pointed out that has been damaged by urban development. So we actually can do that over that period if we want to. Now, to meet this and other ends, I would encourage the city to support or even undertake larger assemblies of land, and also encourage and enable First Nations developers and other groups to do so. That way we can recover about the 35% of land that is currently occupied by street and alley right-of-ways. So that's a lot of space that could be used for nature, parks, community centers, whatever else we want, but you need to do redevelopment on a larger scale in order to enable that. It's great starting off with this longer vision, because walking around the city, I do this all the time. I imagine what it could look like if we take that approach and we can restore the streams and the nature and still have a healthy, vibrant, amazing city, for the future that will be really great for our children and grandchildren, and meet the challenges of excessive rain, which, streams and nature-based solutions are obviously the idea, and the heat we're likely to see, climate change, certainly less asphalt, more greenery, and more water. It will certainly help.
Richard, you're at time. Thanks very much for calling in.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Our next speaker, 43, is Zachary Cameron. Hi, Zachary.
Hello. Thank you for having me here today. Oh, that's cool. That just goes up. Well, so I would like to read a modest proposal for the permanent relief of Vancouver and the rational redistribution of its most deserving residents to a more suitable geography, delivered with sincerity and no small amount of love. Friends, colleagues, stakeholders, I come before you today not as a critic of Vancouver, but as its most devoted admirer. It is my most honest friend, the one at the dinner party who finally says the risotto is undercooked and your husband seems unhappy. Vancouver is undercooked, and its husband, that husband being the global capital class, the credentialed professional, the person who truly deserves a view, is very, very unhappy. I have a proposal. Let us speak plainly about what Vancouver is. Vancouver is a muddy floodplain. It is a city built on a river delta by people who could not afford San Francisco, populated ever since by the people who cannot afford Vancouver. It is at this precise moment in history, completing its long spiritual journey towards becoming Surrey. Not the Surrey of England with its hedgerows and its quiet dignity, the Surrey of King George Boulevard, the Surrey of the 96B line at 2 a.m, the Surrey of the soul. And who is in Vancouver? Let us conduct an honest census. In the Southlands, you have your horse people. Nobody knows why. You have your students, uppity, lone, burdened, furious, absolutely convinced that reading 3 chapters of Graham's entitles them to an opinion about zoning. You have the environmentalists who have strong feelings about almonds and stronger feelings about you. You have sex cults, several, just operating openly with newsletters. You have jugglers. You, of course, have crust punks. You have Indigenous people, some of whom have been here considerably longer than the rest of us and have developed, understandably, a certain attitude about it. You have clowns, professional and amateur, the distinction increasingly academic. You have people hiding from Interpol, money launderers, New Agers, citizens with youthful proclivities, and the man outside the Save-On on Hastings who has been mid-sentence for 4 years. These are people, each of them in someone's way. And that someone, the deserving someone, the someone of worth, of wealth, the someone with a wealth manager and a valid concern about school quality in a neighborhood that their children do not attend, that someone has had enough. They want a city, a real city, clean, legible, secure, beautiful, appropriately priced for people who can afford it with good light in the kitchen and no one strange in the elevator. They want, in short, an island like Hong Kong. 8 million people vertical, gleaming, a maximum of inconvenience rendered invisible by infrastructure and the quiet agreement that certain people don't appear in certain places. Here's the problem. We're not Hong Kong. We are not dense enough to be Hong Kong. We do not have 8 million people. We have 780,000. And of those 780,000, roughly 2/3 are, I'm sorry to say, grubby. Not morally, not even hygienically necessarily, but in the broader sense, in the sense of taking up space in ways that complicate the project of making Vancouver what it ought to be. So the question before us is not, how do we fix Vancouver? The question is, do we need Vancouver at all? I submit to you, Salt Spring Island. Salt Spring Island, population 5,000, removables, area 182 square kilometers, serviced by BC Ferries on a schedule that punishes ambivalence and rewards commitment. Home to artisan cheese, lavender farms, a Saturday market of extraordinary ambition, and an existing class war between the original Back to the Land commune people who arrived in the 1970s having renounced capitalism and have spent the decades since accruing real estate, and the new arrivals who are simply honest about it. It is beautiful, it is defensible, it has a home and garden committee with energy. Here's the plan. We take those 5,000 Salt Spring Islanders, the potters, the goat farmers, the retired teachers, the people who came to escape exactly the people we are discussing, and we relocate them to Burnaby. Burnaby has room, Burnaby has the Lougheed Mall, Burnaby will absorb them. They can take the Murder Crows with them to Wreck Beach, they will be fine, they will make it weird in a new location, that is what they do. And then, Salt Spring is yours. A concentration of glamping for the deserving, a voluntary, incentivized voluntary, I do want to stress voluntary, migration program for the right kind of Vancouverite. You keep your architect, your palettes, you keep your justifiable need for security in the absence of anything that reminds you that the world is large and various and not organized around your comfort. You get the island in Vancouver. Vancouver gets to be what Vancouver has always secretly wanted to be, an open range, a free territory, a city liberated from the burden of trying to be anything for the people who hate it. Kill the power, defund the HOA, let the students have Kitsilano, let the jugglers have Granville Island, they're already there. Let the crust punks have Hastings. You will not need police on Salt Spring. You will not need the RCMP's mounted division. You will need the Home and Garden Committee. You will have last made it, alas, truly, somewhere worth having made it to. Some will say this proposal is cruel, some will say it is satire, some will say it is simply the official development plan with better branding. To those people, I say yes. Yes to all three. Very much.
Zachary, thanks very much. You made me smile. I love a good Vancouver yarn. Appreciate that.
Side note, if anyone wants to email me.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Zachary. Okay, all the best. Our next speaker, 44, is Elizabeth Murphy.
Hello, can you hear me?
You bet. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. This is to register my strong opposition to the Vancouver Official Development Plan. I'm one of the 30 signers on the letter from the Housing Reset Urbanists. I am speaking on my own behalf. The main concerns are, one, questionable population and unit projection methodology and excessive development without affordability or adequate infrastructure. There has been a major shift of how Vancouver ODP and regional context statement calculate population and urban growth projections. Rather than a traditional approach of using regional population projections as allocated to the city by the region, population additions have been instead determined by consultants based on the capacity of the existing and newly approved development in the pipeline. This is resulting in vastly larger growth projections than is realistic given the current economic downturn, resulting in a large amount of overzoning beyond realistic population growth projections. The consultants' growth projections show that with only the development currently approved and in the pipeline, there is already enough capacity to serve growth to 2050. So the city is creating far over capacity of market development beyond what is required for realistic population growth that will result in massive land inflation, speculation, and demolition of more existing affordable housing than it would build, displacing thousands of people. The ODP includes almost no increased infrastructure, parks, recreation, schools, and amenities for the massive increase in projected population growth or any additional funding sources to support it. This will particularly affect many neighborhoods that are already underserved, yet are slated for massive growth under the ODP. 2, loss of participatory planning, neighborhood context, and transparent approval process. All of the existing community, neighborhood, and area plans are headed for major revision or elimination altogether. Every area-wide or community plan will be amended to state that the ODP is the guiding policy document, making them effectively irrelevant. This is the new world of one-size-fits-all zoning based on a limited choice of basic building form typologies applied in a broad-brush manner. Both the Vancouver plan and the ODP have not had any meaningful public participation in the planning process. The ODP doesn't change zoning itself, but it directs all future rezoning, and it makes the rezoning process less transparent with no public hearings for ODP-consistent rezonings. Public hearings have legislated requirements for public engagement and notice. Otherwise, it is at the discretion of staff. 3, excessive literal implementation of provincial mandates. The City of Vancouver cannot solely blame the BC bills for this one-size-fits-all approach. The Vancouver plan already had this strategy. The city should instead be challenging these mandates rather than rushing through the ODP well in advance of the June 30th deadline that the province has shown to be flexible on for other municipalities. Regarding the BC mandate to have no public hearings for rezonings consistent with the general land use designations, there's no provincial restriction for speakers to council that can be allowed at a council committee meeting rather than at a regular council meeting where speakers are not allowed. This is a city choice to not refer rezonings to council committee meetings where speakers are not allowed. This is not a public hearing or under a provincial mandate. Also, the city is implementing land use designations for TOAs based on literal circles around stations, even though the city has a grid system for square blocks. This covers more area than it should and causes mid-block shifts of zoning. Since there already is excessive zone capacity to meet future growth, and we are in a major market correction, we have time to plan properly. Please refer this ODP back to staff for reconsideration through a democratic participatory planning process prior to adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker, 45 has withdrawn, so speaker 46, Kathy Davidson. Are you there, Kathy?
Not on the line.
Okay. The next speaker is 47, Amir Sanayi.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Go right ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Amir Sanayi, and I'm here tonight to support the ODP proposed, and particularly think it will greatly affect affordability, livability, and our next generation planning, the future to live in this city. We must be honest about the root cause of the affordability crisis in Vancouver. In my opinion, the crisis in the city is directly due to the supply failure of developable land. In any market, when demand outpaces available units, prices skyrocket. We cannot subsidize or regulate our way out of shortage. We need more supply, especially the supply of land available for density. Without that foundation, every other affordability measure is just a Band-Aid. In any market, when we artificially restrict supply, you create a cartel situation. In Vancouver, we have restricted multifamily and high-density zoning to such a small areas that the land itself has become an ultra-precious commodity. People who bought property a few years ago for simple speculation are currently benefiting from this artificial scarcity. They hold out for millions of dollars in lottery-style payouts because they know developers have nowhere else to go. But when a developer is forced to pay that inflated land value, that cost is passed directly to the end user, the renter, and the home buyer. By increasing the density of developable land across the city, we remove that restriction. We signal to speculators that their land is no longer a rare commodity. This brings land values back to reality, and those lower costs are passed on to the new owners as affordability measures. I'm particularly in support of the very unique and creative Vancouver Villages initiative around town, and I think it is a smart way to allow well-planned community-focused projects which are more relatable to the general public while keeping the character and form of our town well organized through low-rise and missing middle and ground-oriented residential neighborhoods. We have seen very isolated past rezoning, testing such plans like Little Mountain and Norquay Village. Assembly of land and defining new projects have been nearly impossible in these areas because the supply was too restricted still. And usually only just a few projects per year is successfully defined in each of these rezoning areas, which are initiated by city. So we should not be really scared of all these rezonings are going to create so many projects, I would say. We must be realistic. A village defined today will not fully transform in 2 or even 5 years. This is a 10 to 20-year vision. But defining these areas now, we provide the goal. As such, it gives local businesses the confidence to set up shops and restaurants, and families the certainty to plant their roots in community they know will grow into a complete walkable neighborhoods. It gives a roadmap of meaningful low-rise housing production instead of isolated, random, highly densified high-rise blocks. It also means less burden on transportation and traffic, and also makes use of the existing infrastructure in place in these undeveloped or underdeveloped areas with the potential of creating vibrant neighborhoods and family-oriented areas. I know there are complaints that consultation has been too fast. I respectfully disagree. I believe the city has been too slow to implement plans that are obviously needed to protect our standard of living. Because we did not act in time, the province was forced to step in and mandate like random zonings for multiplexes and TOAs around transit hubs. Many of us are unhappy with this unplanned suffocation, top-down rules forced on the cities without local hearings. But being proactive tonight with our official development plan is how we combat that. It allows us to manage densification in our own terms rather than reacting to provincial decrees that ignore our neighborhood characters. We elect this council and pay our taxes with the expectation that the responsible professional group of people in the city will act in good faith to create a better city. Sometimes our own collective nosiness and demand for endless detail creates the very speed issue that keep us in this crisis. This plan will not destroy the city character. It will save it by ensuring land is used for homes, not for speculation. I urge you to act decisively, support this ODP, and planned increases of high-density zones.
You've reached your time. Thanks very much. Okay, so speaker number 48 is Adrienne Carr. Adrienne, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
You betcha. Go right ahead.
Thank you. First of all, let me say that I am no longer a resident of the city, and I have registered in support. The two reasons that I have decided to support this is, number one, what everyone is saying. This is a requirement of the province to have an ODP in place by June 20th, Bill 18. Unlawful if you don't do it. I suppose you could abstain, but I really suggest you cannot refer it to staff, as some speakers have suggested. There is simply not enough time before June 19th to do the different kind of consultation to satisfy the people who are wanting that. A second reason I'm supporting it is this ODP, as staff have said, is 80% ban plan, Vancouver plan. And that was my first motion in the 2018 term. It was a unanimous motion. So I'm going to ground you in the Vancouver plan of the 2018 to 2022 term. 2 years in person, COVID struck, 2 years of virtual consultation. There was huge public engagement, unbelievable, and an amazing adaptation by staff to go virtual, and I really want to commend staff for the work that they did to do that. I attended every one of the formal public engagement events during that time. The online engagement during COVID specifically included breakout neighborhood group meetings. Unlike what some of the speakers have said, there was neighborhood involvement. They may not have participated, but people at the local level did. Online engagement was specifically great, but there was, in fact, other kinds of engagement prior to that. I really loved how staff took a van, a city plan van, and actually attended a ton of festivals and events around the city. Consensus I saw emerged on these points. Number one, there must be affordable rental and social housing in every neighborhood of the city, not concentration in some neighborhoods as had happened. Two, we must aim for complete neighborhoods, a key being recreation, local shopping, and a range of housing. Three, people were keen on the conversion of their local streets to serve more fully neighborhood needs. The motion put forward by Councillor Fye and at the time Councillor Wiebe was to convert 11% of Vancouver streets from cars to people, including things like community gardens, which are going to be incredibly important during climate change, play areas for kids, places for seniors to sit, dog parks, unbelievable range of wonderful things people wanted. I'm going to ask you to not let naysayers say the Vancouver plan was not supported. I simply don't believe that because I saw the opposite. Yes, there was some opposition by people, but I saw consensus emerge from the people involved in the process and great community outreach that involved them. I also want to just emphasize that although there wasn't a complete focus on neighborhood level planning like the 1990 city plan process, I think former Councillor Hardwick raised, people got involved in the van plan at the neighborhood level and came up with wonderful suggestions. I have 3 suggestions that emerged out of that. Number one, focus on the collaborative process, the goal of a livable city. I urge you to move faster to develop the complete communities that people wanted. I think staff earlier on in the presentation said that there was one local area per year. That's way too slow. You do have to speed that up because that's what people want. In the current local villages planning, I really urge you to respect the unique neighborhood character and the needs of the neighborhood and the charm of those commercial villages. Please don't do walls of high-rise housing on the primary streets. There's no charm in that. But listen to businesses and residents about what does give those villages charm. And 3, involve the public. Make the process collaborative. Staff can offer base information and guidelines and let residents prioritize what they want in their neighborhoods and are in those local villages, and that will truly create a livable city. The second key point I want to emphasize is climate protection is a key goal of the ODP. You must act fast. I'm not there to tell you my, bi-weekly update on how bad it's become out there, but let me tell you, I still continue to read the science, and it is frightening. Scientists are absolutely scared that politicians are not acting fast enough. The plan still incorporates 50% GHG reductions over 2007 levels by 2030 and zero GHG emissions by 2050. You have to figure out how to do that. That's not just written down on paper. You have to figure out what you need to do in terms of adapting into buildings so that they are zero emission.
Thanks.
I wish you would. And the key issue is also money. Make sure that you put the money in place to do this.
Thanks, Adrienne. Good to hear from you. Have a great evening. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Speaker 49 is Roberta Onik.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. I live in Vancouver, but I'm not there right now. I'm in an Eastern time zone for work. Last night I waited up despite the late hour where I am, but the hearing was adjourned before my turn to speak. So tonight I'm trying again because I love Vancouver and I hate what this ODP will do to it. I applaud the many articulate speakers who have already covered many crucial flaws with this plan, including density targets based on artificially inflated population growth estimates, top-down, one-size-fits-all, poor urban planning with excessive emphasis on the expensive dog crates and high-rises we already have lots of, rather than the affordable ground-oriented family housing we really need, demolition of existing affordable housing, inadequate renter protection, vastly insufficient provision for parks, green space, schools, community centers, and infrastructure indispensable for increased density, blatant disregard for the natural setting that makes Vancouver special, including public views and the urban tree canopy essential to mitigate heat island effects, and no incentives to preserve heritage structures. That's just a short list. I beg Council to please really listen and address all these concerns and more. This ODP is largely based on the Vancouver plan passed by the previous Council. That Council was soundly defeated in the 2022 election, sending a message to the current Council that should have been loud and clear. Vancouverites reject a city of concrete towers everywhere to the benefit of big developers, the detriment of residents, and without full citizen participation. But the change we voted for has not occurred under this Council. Transparency clouded to opacity, citizen input rebuffed, shorter time to speak at hearings, no interchange between Council and speakers allowed, and astonishingly limited efforts to inform residents and encourage public participation on everything, especially this ODP that will determine the trajectory of our city for decades to come. 100,000 properties affected by the ODP, but no postcard notification sent. Just a few open houses to help anyone who even happened to hear about them try to understand a complicated, far-reaching plan. I attended one of those open houses. There were numerous confusing information boards and a few apparently junior staff present who were, for the most part, unable to clarify the muddle or answer my many questions. Yet, I'm being asked to support a half-baked plan that will stifle my right to have any future further say beyond today on massive changes that will drastically impact my city, right down to my very block, my very lot. I understand we need to build more housing, and I support affordable, livable densification that provides the right type of housing. But I do not support imposed surprises, be they sudden evictions of renters or block-busting high-rises sprouting up willy-nilly in low-density areas. The uncertainty of what I could find myself suddenly living next to with no prior warning and no consideration of site-specific consequences is a source of ongoing stress and anxiety for me. That alone is making Vancouver increasingly unlivable. Supporters of this ODP claim that site-by-site public hearings only benefit the NIMBYs opposed to change. But that is patently untrue, given that virtually no development proposal has been denied by this or the previous Council, even projects with strong public opposition. What is true is that in some cases, public hearings have brought to light significant issues that would otherwise have been overlooked, and that Council was then able to address with amendments. The fact is that citizens familiar with their particular patch are uniquely qualified to detect important things on the ground that Council and developers inevitably miss. Catching these oversights is one key purpose of public hearings. How many such oversights will slip through the cracks, the gaping holes, once this ODP silences the public and turns major development decisions over to a few unelected staff? That one question alone is justified to abhor the provincially mandated end to public hearings for ODP-compliant projects. And the undeniable implication of that mandated end to public hearings is that this ODP absolutely must be subjected to extraordinarily detailed, beyond the norm thorough, fastidiously critical analysis and contemplation before approval, before it's too late. Rethink this ODP. There is no rush to approve it. Even the provincial deadline backs that.
Thanks very much, Speaker. So our speaker number 50 is Randy Helton. Randy, go ahead. You there?
Just checking, Chair. Speaker 50 is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 51 is Jillian McGuire.
Speaker 51 is also not on the line.
Speaker 52 is Mark Battersby.
I am on the line.
Is that you, Mark?
That is me.
Very good. Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm Mark Battersby. I'm a resident of Vancouver. I'm opposed to the plan as presented. I'm the former president of the Kitts Arbutus Residents Association, and was one of the leads on the residents' negotiation in the development of Arbutus Walk. I joined with the writers of the open letter from Housing Reset calling for the proposed ODP to be sent back to planners. I will just emphasize a few objections. Given the previous speaker, a couple of speakers ago, putting forth the myth of scarcity of development, I just want to speak to that, as Patrick Condon has. We've had huge amount of building, so one wonders why prices are what they are. And I recommend, if the council members have not read David Lay's book, Housing Booms in Gateway Cities, we are a victim of a worldwide use of housing as a investment. The house prices are affordable in Vancouver, not because of scarcity, but because they are being purchased by people for speculation or investment. If it was driven by demand, local demand, it wouldn't be affordable. It would be prices that people could afford, but it's not driven by local demand. Also want to say, as a representative of who's participated in city-wide city and local planning and development, I want to celebrate and reinforce the need for public participation. The province's overreach should not be supported, but should be resisted. The Arbutus Walk, the development of the former Molson Brewery site, is, as most of you know, a world-renowned example of sensible development, and it is a result of having citizens participate in the urban planning process. It took many years, but it produced an enormously livable and admirable development. I have attended many of the recent council meetings about zoning and development, and I have been struck, as I was before, by the astuteness of fellow citizens. I'm also by the extent to which the wise advice has often been ignored. I did attend the presentations of the ODP plan, and they were not examples of citizen participation. They were one way. We'll tell you how it is to the extent we could understand it, but there was no real opportunity for feedback, discussion, etc. It was a cell, not a collaborative investigation. Secondly, while the city clearly needs housing that is affordable, the plan fails to provide for that, and will, as the Broadway plan is doing, result in displacement of what reasonable rental housing we already have. Thirdly, as mentioned by many speakers, the use of unlikely population projections to support the plan does not justify the need for adjusting, as Beth Murphy just mentioned. And also, if we were to take seriously those population projections, there's nothing in the plan that indicates there would be adequate infrastructure would be provided. The city's infrastructure is already strained. One goes to the Hillcrest Pool, for example, you can clearly see that. The current policy, provincial policy to close schools, is a further menace to the developmental proposal and population assumptions. A development plan must contain a robust plan to make the city a place where people can find schools, parks, and recreational facilities and enjoy it as a community where their children raise their children and thrive. Lastly, I share with other citizens the love of Vancouver and its commitment to well-being. I speak here today with sadness and reluctance, knowing from experience how our elected representatives and employees of the city, whose salaries our taxes pay, have chosen to ignore the wise and well-informed input of citizens of the city. I call upon you tonight to demonstrate respect for the citizenship and send the ODP back for proper citizen consultation.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 53 is Frank Heisleman.
I'm here, yes. Can you hear me?
You bet. Go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Frank Heisleman. I live in Vancouver, and I strongly oppose the Vancouver Official Development Plan, particularly the heavy reliance on high-rise residential towers. High-rise tower developments do not provide a livable long-term urban environment for most residents. They are not conducive to raising families and tend to weaken neighborhood-level social connections that are essential for healthy communities. When dozens of experienced and respected urban planners, architects, and academics who share admiration for the Vancouver they helped shape, call the plan a wrong turn that will lock the city into 30 years of inflated land speculation, demolition of affordable housing, and a permanent loss of democratic oversight, I urge you to listen. Do not turn Vancouver into Hong Kong or Manhattan, with people living in dog crates in the sky. Instead, focus on designing and building family-friendly, affordable low to mid-rise housing. Consider the alternative plan from the Jericho Coalition, for the Jericho lands, which proposes high-density, livable, more sustainable, and more affordable urban development featuring 4 to 8-story buildings. There's a far better way to densify Vancouver than what you outline in your ODP. Look at Copenhagen for inspiration if you want to. Before embarking on such a disastrous multi-generational shift for Vancouver in the form of this ODP, listen to the respected city planners, architects, and urbanists who strongly advise that the ODP be withdrawn. I respectfully urge you to withdraw the Vancouver ODP and revise it in a fundamental way. Prioritize human-scale, low and medium-rise development, along with appropriate investment in parks, community centers, schools, and healthcare services. Please reconsider the current high-rise focus. It's absolutely insane, and it will only decrease the livability and the beauty of the city. With those views, putting these high-rise towers all over the place, other cities would kill if they had views like we do. And you just put high-rise towers everywhere. Please don't do that. Reconsider the current high-rise focus, especially for high-rise residential towers. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for calling in tonight. Okay, our next speaker, 54, has withdrawn. Speaker 55 is John Gerard. John, are you there?
Speaker 55 is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 56, Rob Marsh, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Rob Marsh. I'm a Vancouver resident, and I have been this time for over 15 years. But I grew up in Richmond, and I've lived in San Francisco Bay Area and the Greater Toronto Hamilton area as an adult. So I do have some experience of other cities for comparison to ours. With regret, I oppose the ODP in its current form. Increasing affordable housing is a crucial goal. I have daughters who are young adults. I am acutely aware of the importance of affordable housing. But protecting the beauty and character of Vancouver for everyone is also an important goal. Unfortunately, I don't think that the ODP as proposed advances either objective. One thing that dismays me is that the plan fails to sufficiently emphasize and protect some of the irreplaceable features that have made Vancouver such a wonderful and unique city. In particular, it seems to place little, if any, emphasis on the visual environment of our public spaces, our streets, our sidewalks, our bike paths, our parks. Trees, the mountains, the ocean, and the sky. Their visual presence while driving, walking, biking, playing sports or games in the park, or just hanging out is one of the defining, differentiating features of our city. A visual backdrop that is available to all residents and visitors. This stunning public visual environment is a feature that should remain available to everyone, not just to those in oceanfront mansions or who can afford to live in buildings that will loom over our trees and block out the sun, the mountains, and the sky from our public spaces. The visual environment of our public spaces is not a superficial concern. It is actually a matter of equity and collective heritage, and, pardon the pun, we should not lose sight of that. I have other concerns, many of which have been described in the comments from others that you've already received. Obviously, there isn't the need or the time for me to reiterate them here, but I have to say that the responses I've heard so far to the very specific and detailed concerns raised have struck me as profoundly inadequate and unsatisfying. I also must agree with the comments that outreach and consultation have been insufficient. I have found that it requires active, time-consuming monitoring and searching to keep abreast of when and what changes are potentially happening to the city and when and how residents might be able to provide our feedback and make our voices heard. It shouldn't be this hard. Finally, I do understand that there will be formal opportunities to comment on future rezonings and development applications, and that the ODP itself does not formally change any zoning. Nevertheless, the plan does seem to strongly suggest or even imply certain changes, at least in concept. And I think there's a real legitimate fear that when it does come to zoning and development, any challenges to these implied changes will be dismissed with a response along the lines of, oh, but we already discussed the desirability of this in the official development plan. It seems we're being told that the ODP is an important, meaningful document with clear implications and consequences, but that at the same time, we shouldn't worry about anything in it because we'll all be able to substantively challenge any significant implied changes at a later date. Can you blame us for being skeptical, especially given the existing dissatisfaction with the outreach and consultation to date? So to summarize, I fear that the ODP ignores the views and perspectives of those who live here in more ways than one. We should be able to address the issue of affordable housing while maintaining the unique beauty and character of our city. I think the proposed ODP fails to do this. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Okay, our next speaker, 57, Sal Robinson.
Hello.
Hi, go right ahead.
Thanks. I'm Sal Robinson. I'm a Vancouver resident and have been all my life. The proposed official development plan is not ready for prime time, and I urge you to not approve it until it is. Hundreds of residents have written and spoken to you with the same view, and far more eloquently than I will. Dozens of experienced and respected urban planners, architects, academics wrote to you about their shared apprehension for the fate of the Vancouver they helped create. They called the plan a wrong turn. I hope you have the wisdom to pay attention to them. I've been addressing public hearings for 7 years now, and I fully understand the attraction of a plan that would eliminate a bunch of them. But it's sadly clear that the city has long ago adopted the decide, announce, defend strategy of policymaking, which explains the multitudes of long and onerous public hearings filled with anxious and angry residents who hate what is being imposed on us. We resent the pretense of consultation and react accordingly. And this is exactly what the province has done, except they don't bother with the pretense. They just decide and announce. What kind of democracy bans public hearings? So push back. Give them an ODP that nothing complies with, and let the public go on having a chance to say what we think. But seriously, this isn't finished yet. Please send the proposed ODP back, not to the drawing board that spawned it, but to the residents of the city it is poised to change so dramatically. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for calling in. Okay, Speaker 58 is Farhad Akhtarai.
Speaker 58 is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 59, Barbara May.
Not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 60, Farah Shroff. Farah Shroff.
Speaker 60 is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 61, Alexander Dungate. Oh, here he comes. Oh, careful. Just at the podium here, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you bet. Go ahead.
Out of breath from running down the stairs there. I was wondering if I can use my time to ask a question.
We don't take questions at this point, but you can certainly put questions as part of your presentation.
Awesome. Okay. Hello, my name is Alexander. I'm 28, live in an apartment in Kitts. All my friends always want to come to my apartment because they think it's the coolest part of town, the most iconic part of Vancouver. In the current ODP, it's supposed to be replaced with wall-to-wall towers. Many people have been calling in explaining why they don't wish that future either. A lot of other folks have mentioned how it feels like this plan is just being forced upon them and there isn't much of a choice being offered here. So my question to you all is, completely theoretically, what would need to happen for the city to consider a plan where it supplies the missing middle type of housing instead of wall-to-wall towers? My friends and many folks in my generation are craving that type of future for our city, but we've never seen that discussed as even a real option. There's always experts coming to events like this to advocate for why those are more efficient cities, create better community, all of this. And yet we are going ahead with these wall-to-wall towers anyway. And so listening in today and yesterday, I think it would be helpful to provide the people of the city with at least a path of, okay, if folks are really wanting this, this is how that path could happen. And that's something I haven't seen yet. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming in. Oh, one moment, Speaker. We got a question from Councillor Fry for you.
Yes. We don't typically ask questions, but we are allowed to. And just if you get a chance, have you watched the earlier questions that we were asking of staff? Because I think it may...
I tuned in for a bunch of it. I missed some of them.
Yeah, so some of the questions we were asking staff, which may be worth, perhaps you might want to tune in and review some of that, because I think it answered some of the misconceptions, and arguably maybe the presentation didn't really articulate that it's not wall-to-wall towers. It's suggesting where towers could exist, but they're not necessarily going to be all towers. There is missing middle kind of contemplated within there, so...
I think that I appreciate engaging me. Thank you. That's nice. I think that still misses the mark for what folks are feeling when you see the plan in the ODP and my all of the blocks around my house, for instance, are expected to be bulldoze and replaced with 60-story towers. And there's some neighborhoods that are great zone for middle and low rises. But I don't think I've seen a path where. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the question is if you'd seen that earlier presentation.
I have seen that, and I would say, based on everybody's comments after seeing the presentation, they're still not seeing this as an actual path where here the density of towers outside of the downtown core could actually, it looks like it would be more. And I actually thought, Councillor Klassen, I thought you were doing an excellent job fielding questions to the city planners yesterday. Thank you for that. There's one of their answers I thought was slightly misleading, which was that you're saying this isn't the last opportunity for the public to provide input, which is maybe potentially true, but with the flow diagram of when there would be public hearings for many of the residential towers, there wouldn't actually be another public hearing. And so I think that's what a lot of folks are concerned about. where we see this as one of the last paths.
Thank you.
Mr. Fry, is that great?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again for coming in.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Speaker 62 is Mayali Alvarez.
Speaker 62 is not on the line.
Speaker 63 is Maria Louisa Alvarez.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Maria Louisa Alvarez, and I'm a resident of Vancouver, and I oppose this ODP. I would like to start off by saying that the speaker who began this evening, speaker number 39, I completely agree with all the points that they made. And I think for me as a resident of Vancouver, besides all the excellent points that all of the speakers have made in opposition to the ODP, my biggest concern as a resident of Vancouver and a human living through climate crisis, which is only something that gets scarier every year that passes, and I think governments who are failing to deal with solutions and come up with plans for their cities or for the areas that they're supposed to take care of, I think it's a huge issue. And the fact that Vancouver just keeps building and building and building, and I do understand that there's a housing crisis, there's an affordability crisis that, of course, you have to deal with as a city. But at the same time, I live in the Oakridge, the old Oakridge Mall area, and I think that anyone, I ask all of you who are making this decision to pass this ODP, have you taken a walk through this neighborhood? And not drive through it with your car, which you'll be stuck in traffic forever anyway, but actually walk through this neighborhood. Our neighborhood has been completely destroyed. There's not a single block that you can walk down where there isn't some huge tower development application sign posted that's been approved, that's coming up. Where I live, if you try to walk or drive out, all of the exits are blocked by construction. Not only do we not rest during the week, we don't rest during the weekends because, of course, these developers have supposed permits that they can keep doing construction on Sundays. Even when they don't, they just pay fines and they keep going. Like, nobody cares. There's no regulation. No one is holding these people accountable for what they do to the neighborhoods, let alone families who have to pay for flat tires once a month because of the construction that's happening. A construction vehicle crashed into my family's van, and we had to pay for that, not the person who did it. So there's just all these problems that come up with this nonstop construction, and I know it might sound silly to a lot of you that I'm saying this, but this nonstop construction is affecting your citizens. It's affecting the residents of Vancouver who are trying to live as well as they can in this unaffordable city. And the fact that this ODP is going through with just more and more and more, and the experts in this topic have obviously spoken about this issue much more articulate than I can. I'm not an expert in urban planning, but I admire the experts that have come forward and have shared their opinions, and I think that city council should look to these experts. Respectfully, you are not the experts in this topic, so please look to the experts who know what they're talking about. And the embodied carbon that this city has and will cause with the destruction and continuation of this incessant, just nonstop construction and development that doesn't stop. I think a huge example would be the VAC scandal, the Vancouver Aquatic Center. Like, that building doesn't need to be torn down. Yes, it needs maintenance, but maintenance wasn't done so that it could then be destroyed. But why? It's a perfectly sound building that needs some renovations. It needs some upkeep. But why destroy a building that's going to have such intense embodied carbon when you could just build a smaller pool that, yes, would help communities to have more access to pools? But that's a perfect example of how the city just keeps destroying and destroying and destroying. Yes, you're building, but at what rate? For who? Like, at this rate, who's going to be able to live in this city? Like, the people who work in this city also need to be able to live in this city. And if everything just keeps getting built for people who, yes, they can afford living in these towers or in these different development sites that you're doing. But right now, the neighborhood that I live in, I am sure very soon I won't be able to live here. But I challenge each of you to take a walk through the Oak Ridge Mall area. There's probably a 10-block radius, if not even bigger, where every single corner you see houses being destroyed, you see towers being posted in the application for development signs. It's unreal. I don't recognize my neighborhood.
That's your time,
I've seen...
Speaker. Thanks very much for calling in tonight.
Thanks.
Speaker 64 is Jane Banks. Not in the chamber. Okay. Speaker 65, Jean Logan. Hi, Jean. Just come up to the podium there. Welcome.
Which one? This one?
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Jean Logan. I'm a longtime resident of Vancouver. I have lived here for like 60 of my 70 years. I lived up north on Haida Gwaii and Prince Rupert for about 10 years. I worked as a commercial fisherman. I've worked in the construction industry here. I did that for about 15 years. I'm 70 and I'm still working. I work for Canada Post now, so I can afford my rent. I don't know. I don't get the feeling that y'all are being entirely upfront with this process here. If you can send a text out to somebody to let them know that their recycling needs to be out the next day, you can text people to let them know about the most important meeting, the most important planning decision, in the city in decades. I didn't find out about this until the day before the meeting from a friend. So I think you did a pretty lousy job there. I would like to challenge this idea that the population is going to grow by millions. BC lost 70,000 people last year. According to Google, Vancouver lost about 4,600 every year between the years 2016 and 2021. We're still growing because of immigration, but the immigration is being cut back. So our population is not going to grow like you say. And I think there's a lot of desire for or emphasis on expediency here. Like this plan is all about high rises, and for the Rupert Renfrew, it's these 6-story, huge footprint walls of apartments. I've worked on those. I know there's nothing to recommend them that makes them special. Same thing, I worked on about maybe 20 of the high rises in Yaletown. And there's very little difference in the floor plans between any of these buildings. And you get a little change in the balcony on the outside, and that's about it. If I was a young person looking at paying $2,900 for a sub 500 square foot unit, I would leave. I would go to Montreal, where there's much nicer accommodation available and at far lower prices, even though things are more expensive now than they used to be. I would not stay. And these are the people we're losing. We're losing our young people. And that's the future of this city. I'm a grandparent. I would like to see my grandson be able to continue to live here and to enjoy the things like the mountains and the ocean that we just connect with without even being conscious of it. But these high rises are going to wall that off. They're going to cut off light in a city that doesn't get a lot of light at certain times of year. And like I was saying, these 6-story walk-ups proposed for Renfrew Rupert, that's just going to make these dingy, dark canyons. Again, why would you want to live there? You get, livability is about more than just offering people a box to live in. I think there's a solution to this. We are the most densely populated city in Canada. We're number 3 in North America. Montreal is second in Canada. It's about 80% of what we are. And San Francisco is second in North America, by the way. I never hear anybody saying Montreal and San Francisco would be improved if they had more 40-story high-rises. We could, there's a block, West 13th, 1300 block, or sorry, West 14th, just between Hemlock and the street east. It's a mix of 3-story walk-ups. There's a few houses left, and there's 3 high-rises for a total of probably about 25 stories. This is a template you could use for every block just about in the residential parts of the city. You put a limit of 30 stories, no high-rise higher than, say, 13 stories. It lets light in, it keeps the greenery, and it's a livable place. Go check it out. 1300 block, West 14th. It's a beautiful little street. Unfortunately, there's a 20-story tower that's going up over one of the heritage buildings on the corner there. One more thing, we can expand to Nanaimo. We're not hemmed in. We can expand to Nanaimo, and I'd like to see that be part of the greater strategy for growth in Vancouver.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Speaker 66 is Carol Vulkart.
Speaking. Can you hear me?
You bet. Go right ahead.
Okay. My name is Carol Vulkart. I'm a Vancouver resident who opposes the ODP. Thank you for this chance to speak. I know you've heard a lot of concerns about the ODP. I share all of them, but instead of repeating them, I'd like to emphasize one main point. And that is that I do not think the public has been properly informed or consulted about the ODP. In that, I'm exactly opposite to what Adrienne Carr has just told us all. But my impression of what went on during the whole entire consultation period for both the Vancouver plan and the ODP is that it was grossly inadequate. I challenge any of you to go out in the street and ask the first 20 people you meet whether they know what the ODP is and what it does. I'm confident you'll be lucky to find one who has even heard of it. That's certainly the case in my own neighborhood. I'm a member of the community association here, and I often ask people this question. The response is almost always a blank look. To me, this means the city has utterly failed to first inform and then consult with citizens on this massive new plan that will transform our city. You're probably tired of hearing how much better consultation was during the development of the city plan in the 1990s. More than 100,000 people were involved, when the city's population was more like 500,000. But it really was a totally different approach. A city planner of the time told me about the Ideas Fair, where thousands of people brought sketches and ideas to a weekend event. The city really promoted this involvement. It organized 100 city circles of people who discussed the issues. It had an office in the mall beside City Hall where people could drop in and talk to staff about the plan. There were city staff in neighborhoods talking to people, and neighborhoods had surveys and workshops. The media was heavily involved in the discussion and events. And I think that that's one of the real things that we're lacking, because our media basically don't cover local issues anymore. The city has to step in and play that role. But people who used to depend on the media for their information are basically completely left out. Compared to I'm comparing the city plan to the current process, where we hear over and over again that the ODP is based on the extensive consultation that was done for the Vancouver plan. But let's be honest, the Vancouver plan was developed during COVID, when people were hunkered down in their homes, worrying about other things than a new plan at City Hall. Most people pay little attention to city issues at the best of times, so this was a particularly poor time to engage them. Almost everything was done online, and there's been a lot of criticism, in spite of what Adrienne Carr says, but there was a lot of criticism about how those online consultations went. And online is fine for some people, but not everyone is tuned in to Shape Your City or other city sites. In my community, I'd say it's a very small number. The result was that they missed all those meetings and surveys and Q&As that were done during COVID. And once again, because there's no other means now, if you're not on social media and you don't spend your time online, you're just left out of it. They certainly don't send postcards or paper notices to residents anymore. So I know your report says there were over 52,000 engagement touch points and hundreds of stakeholder organizations were involved, and that there was a deliberate effort to engage usually underrepresented groups. But what's a touch point? I asked a staff member at an in-person event, and he didn't know. Is it someone clicking by accident on a Shape Your City screen, or maybe clicking on it for a few seconds several times? Regardless, 52,000 touch points in a city of 700,000 is hardly an indication of huge involvement, certainly not enough to base changing your whole city on. As for the hundreds of stakeholder organizations and underrepresented groups, check the acknowledgement section at the end of the Vancouver plan. 2/3 of a page is devoted to real estate and development industries, and there are many lists of those special interest groups.
So that's your time, Speaker. Thanks very much for calling in tonight.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker 67, Alan Drinkwater.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors.
Hi, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. Prior to 2022, pardon me, residents gave much time and energy to the crafting of neighborhood-specific development plans. These have all been cast aside, abandoned in favor of a one-size-fits-all approach to development. We know our neighborhoods in Vancouver are all very different and very unique. There's different cultures, there's different demographics, there's different geographies. We need to have a plan that takes that into account. The BC government requirements and a neighborhood-based planning approach are not mutually exclusive. We need to go back to a neighborhood plan that takes these things into account. The future of our city, if this ODP is approved, is very much at risk because a lot of damage can be done in 5 years. A lot of damage can be done. It cannot be allowed to proceed. And who are we trying to accommodate with all these extra housing units that are in the plans? The existing empty, developed, ready-to-occupy housing units, plus the developments in progress that have been approved, plus the developments in the queue waiting for approval,
Speaker,
are more than... Yes.
Have you already spoken to this item? I'm sorry.
I have not.
Okay,
I
carry
have
on.
sent
My
you
apologies.
comments,
Yeah, you were listed earlier. Carry on.
I stayed online yesterday evening. I was speaker number 25, and for whatever technical reason at your end, I was not heard.
Okay.
In any event,
We'll give you a bit more time. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. What's available and what's in the queue and what will be approved presumably is more than enough to accommodate the population growth that is projected. Further, the federal government has cut back on temporary student visas and has cut back on immigration. So we're going to be way overstocked. We do not need to destroy our city to create all of this housing that has very much questionable need in the future. Now, as regards the deadline imposed by the provincial government, look, our provincial government representatives, they're smart and sensitive individuals. They will listen to their constituents. And if the message is that the ODP is wrong, then they will give more time to get it right. We have placed in you our trust to guide the city forward in the best manner for our city. If you move this forward, it violates the trust that has been placed in you. One of the things, I'm not a renter, but one of the things that concerns me greatly here is that existing affordable and entirely suitable rental accommodation will be destroyed in favor of expensive, tiny living units that are beyond the reach of people on median incomes. The ODP will be creating hardship for those who need the most help. Are you, as our elected representatives, seriously considering the livability implications of the approved Vancouver ODP? Are you honestly trying to create a significant count of truly affordable and livable housing units? Livable. This means spacious. This means ability to be part of a neighborhood, low-rise, access to green spaces, community centers, pools, etc., regardless of what neighborhood they're built in. I don't think this ODP is going to accomplish this in no way, shape, or form. As the elected leaders in whom we Vancouver citizens have placed our trust to guide our city with care into the future, you must vote no to the Vancouver ODP. Please put an immediate stop to the destruction of our city. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Speaker 68 is all of you. Hello, go ahead.
Hello? Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Olive, and I'm a resident of Vancouver. Today, I speak against the Vancouver official ODP. 我係余麗富，我今天出嚟係強烈反對呢個溫哥華嘅 official 嘅發展計劃。First of all, I think the most important thing why I oppose this official plan, as many other speakers who opposed this plan previously said about a lack of consultation. As take example of the upzoning of the Rupert and Renville area further beyond the TOA. I have lots of relatives or friends living in that area. Hardly any of them know about that. And even for this ODP public hearing, I have to communicate with some of them. They don't know anything. How could you expect a person could read about the 204 changes and with two versions without any note on what to change? I attended one of those few open houses on ODP last year. But then it seemed to me that the city planning staff could not answer my question. Take, for example, for the village, why I said, how come, there is a village just across the Fraser Cemetery? Can you imagine Vancouver is such a city with so lack of housing? We have to justify to build a so-called village across the cemetery. And along that few blocks, there are big funeral homes and there are companies selling the tombstone. I think, and that the officer told me that, it's based on secure rental policy. I don't understand. And he could not explain to me. With this approval of the ODP, which I strongly urge the elected councillor to oppose, because this is almost a big change of the democratic approach. If this is approved, no public hearing will be held. That means we are shut off of all our comment. But in order to do that, you need to earn our trust of your clear consultation, full consultation. The reason why I said it's not because it's based on my experience recently. It's only just about 1 or 2 weeks. We were only informed accidentally about the QE Park proposal to turn into an adventure park, zip line, and then those canopy walk. Okay? And then when I read the report, they said, in more than 1 year, the staff had consulted staff, but within that more than 1 year, only one resident group with 200, maybe 50 members being consulted out of 700,000 population. This is less than 0.1%. How can we have trust of this thoroughness, of reasonableness of this plan? And about the infrastructure, park is very lacking because of growing population. And QE Park is our dream. With other 60 trees, you build into those canopies or tree walk. They're for tourists. How can a normal person, like my granddaughter's son, will pay $20 each time to go up this walk? Like senior people like me go up this walk? Instead of, you should provide more a playground at least for the children around. They're no longer having house to live, okay? And then give us more picnic tables. This is what we want, but not tourists occupying the only central area, okay? And another thing which I would like to talk about is about infrastructure. I think we might have learned about the recent repealing of the blanket rezoning in Calgary. And it happens that, I understand from my friend that Mr. George White, who is our current city planner head, is also the city planner head at Calgary and is advocating for that blanket approval. Right now, they're going to have a public hearing to appeal this blanket approval, once and for all approach. It's because of the infrastructure could accommodate that. Look at the recent 2 water dam damage. Right now, my friends in Calgary told me that there to be unrestricted water supply with only 3 minutes bathing. I think with the sewage system in Vancouver, a lot of them are more than 100 years. And according to the sewage plan, you only could replace them in 2050. How can you, in parallel, develop so many towers and things like that, okay? And this is one thing which I would like to have the elected
Thanks
council
very
think.
much, Speaker. That's your time. Appreciate you calling.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaker 69, Andrea Castanis.
Can you hear me?
You bet. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to voice my opposition to the ODP as drafted. And instead of going over all of the reasons why, I want to focus on a couple areas where I believe that improvements could be made within the few months approaching the deadline for registering the ODP according to Bill 18. The first that I'll mention is the urban structure strategy. As was laid out by staff, that envisions a 50 to 100 year projection on overall planning, development, and growth within the city. It is a very long range forecast, and I would recommend that council consider extracting that aspect of the plan, principally because as it came to the surprise of, I think, the public, but even some of the councillors amongst you, that this is in fact the interim ODP, which will need to be fully fleshed out in the next 5 years before the official development plan is formalized by enveloping the existing ODPs that are based on areas or other policies. I believe that would help to restore some of the public confidence in what appears to be very long-range forecasting and very, very significant changes to density and height, particularly in the Metro Core and Broadway Plan areas. The second point that I'd like to make, and I think is a reasonable ask of council at this point, is to look carefully at how the public, how council, how staff is to understand and appreciate what is consistent or inconsistent with the official development plan. When I've read through the recommendation report and the plan itself and the appendices, to be honest, it is unintelligible and untransparent if there are any defined metrics upon which the assessment of consistency of a particular rezoning application can be evaluated or documented or overseen by council. Who the arbiter of consistency is fundamental to public trust in this ODP. You do not want it to be the courts. I would suggest that it should not be exclusively staff. Please consider council direction on tangible and clear metrics for that evaluation. The last thing I'd like to mention is that the local area plans truly will be neutered by these broad policy statements that are to accompany the general land use map. I urge Council to incorporate by reference the rezoning policies that are already established for the many neighborhoods that have local area plans for which much work has gone into over the years. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Okay, Speaker 70 is Viru Giten.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Viru Giten, the chair of OPIAC Older People Elders Advisory Committee for the City of Vancouver. As you consider the ODP, I'm here representing myself to encourage you to make Vancouver more age-friendly city. As we all well know, the seniors population in Vancouver is rapidly rising. The priorities named in this ODP report should include the following. Recognize that the City of Vancouver did a senior strategy framework plan which integrates programs and services. Please follow that. Number 2, in terms of housing, multi-bedroom layout enables the co-location of older adults and caregivers, which is really important. The design of smaller care homes should be also increased. It should also include enforcing the TRPP, which we all know that the city has adopted for our vulnerable population. It is imperative to incorporate the City of Vancouver Seniors Housing Strategy Report. It is also essential to create a new innovative design for dementia-friendly, inclusive planning. Studies have shown that a rapid change in city planning can lead to stress and serious mental health problems for seniors with disabilities. It is important to build more affordable housing for seniors on fixed income, such as the case study in New Westminster. Number 3, I think it is crucial to prioritize services to overcome transport, mobility, and health challenges. References can be made to the City of Vancouver Accessibility Strategy Report. It is vital to increase community spaces for older adults and long-term care beds. Number 5, the City of Vancouver Healthy City Strategy Report came out a few months ago, points to isolation and loneliness as a big factor. Therefore, the plan should create spaces for social connections. WHO recognizes this as a chronic problem in our vulnerable population, leading to mental health issues. And one of our counselors have been kind enough to recognize that. Number 6, I urge you to work with partners, community services providers, and seniors hubs to strengthen networking. Number 7, with climate change, taking into account the 2021 heat dome with over 600 deaths is a major concern. The importance of preserving public realm and green spaces helps engagement. This works well with a coordinated emergency and safety response teamwork. Seniors have made and continue to make tremendous, meaningful, and visible, that's important, visible, because seniors are visible, want to be visible, contributors. The ODP can improve by tracking seniors' needs with surveys. Finally, a quote I love to bring up at the Black African Month last week at the Langara. This was brought up. It says this is how it goes. We hope people who care for seniors get to know who seniors are. And that's my wrap. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for calling in, Bruce. Okay. Speaker 71 is Lopa Circar.
Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, great. Hi, my name is Lopa Circar. I am opposed to the ODP. Councillors, please vote against the current incarnation of the Vancouver Official Development Plan. I know that we need a vision for our future and that we need to plan for growth, but the current proposed ODP and the permanency of it do not reflect the reality of where we actually are as a city in this moment in time. I have 5 points to make. 1, a reliable and trustworthy ODP should be peer-reviewed by other competent institutions and municipalities. There was no peer review for this ODP, which puts in serious doubt the legitimacy of it as an effective 30-year plan for the city. 2, we do not have a housing crisis in Vancouver. We have an affordable housing crisis in Vancouver. The ODP provides more units of housing. It does not provide the substantially more units of affordable housing that the people who live in the city need now. Instead, the ODP tears down existing affordable housing and puts up badly designed, cramped, low-income housing at an income threshold that is simply not low enough for many of Vancouver's current residents. 3, I am very concerned about the current council and previous council's track records for prioritizing services. Example, 5 years to approve a much-needed elementary school in the Olympic Village. Example, 10 years for Carleton Elementary in Collingwood to be permanently closed after fire, and then there's still no clear future plan. Never mind that the residents of Collingwood did not want the school to be closed. Example, 8 years and the River District still does not have the community center it was promised. I could go on. This track record does not give me confidence that Council will prioritize services. I am deeply concerned that this ODP will only further entrench our city's habit of enticing people to live here without giving them the services and support they need to make living here rewarding. Point 4, you describe the ODP as aspirational. A sound ODP that has been built in collaboration with the citizens it is meant to serve should be inspirational. To be inspirational, you needed to have citizens on board. That means we should have been consulted. There should have been a massive awareness campaign over the past several years that you've been developing the ODP. This did not happen, not even close. A smattering of unadvertised information sessions in only a few of the city's neighborhoods does not count as meaningful consultation. The ODP should be vernacular by now and on the lips of every Vancouver resident. Instead, barely anyone knows that it's even happening. This is a failure on the part of Council. Point number 5, your obligation as councillors is to represent the best interests of the citizens and residents of the City of Vancouver who live here now, not the theoretical people who might move here in the future, and certainly not the interests of developers. By eliminating, prohibiting public consultation, you are creating an environment in which the people who are already struggling to live here as it is, our nurses, teachers, bus drivers, artists, civil servants, will be forced out because the only voice that will be left is the voice of developers. This is not only going to be a brain drain. This also means the loss of the kind of deep experiential knowledge that you can only get from having a history here and applying that history to what you do for work and how you contribute to our community. Sure, the ODP may have new people coming in, but they won't have the experiential knowledge of what it is to be a Vancouverite. And those who do know, who can share their knowledge with our neighbors, well, this ODP will have pushed them out. Such a loss is a catastrophic down-the-road consequence of adapting the current ODP. Point number 6, and to conclude, we're in a municipal election year. Councillors, I urge you to listen to your constituents and fight for our interests. Go back to the drawing board with this ODP and this time consult citizens in a meaningful way. Get us on your side so together we can support you in an official development plan that is as aspirational as it is inspirational. Fight for our interests, not developers, not lobbyists, us, the people who voted you in and can vote every one of you out. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Speaker 72 is Andrew Braum.
Not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 73 is Lisa Penny.
73 is not on the line.
Speaker 74, Sarah McLeod.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Council. I really just want to urge you guys to oppose the ODP. And my experience living here has been, sorry if it's loud, I'm by the road, has been living in the Canby corridor, very close to Oak Ridge. And I really don't have much faith or that the city can handle what's going to happen if the ODP passes, because I can see it every day that they can't even manage or handle what is happening over by Oak Ridge. When you make an official development plan and you say that the developers, or basically show that developers mean more than the community, because an official community plan could have been an option, right? It really sets a really, well, it changes exactly what people are saying. It changes the fabric of the city. I'm basically flanked by construction in every which direction around me where I live. And my neighbors, I have many neighbors that live in the area. I also have over 3,000 neighbors that are construction workers at all of these upwards of, dozens of sites in very close proximity. And I do consider them my neighbors because I see them every day. That's the people I interact with. I have some great relationships with some of the site supervisors, not so great relationships with some others. But what was interesting was a conversation I was having with one of the site supervisors, and we were just talking about the area. And he was, by the way, every construction worker, which is not a lot compared to 3,000, but it's, a couple dozen that I've talked to in the area, don't think anything that they're building is for people, by the way. They have a job and they want to do their job and they need to put food on their table for their families, so they do that job. But they're like, who's going to live here, by the way? And so this person I was talking to, this site supervisor, he was talking about he lives in Surrey, and he was talking about how, like, oh, don't worry, like, you see all these trees coming down, it's fine. We save some of them. I take them home, I take them to Surrey, and I plant them in my neighborhood. So our trees are going there, by the way. And then he mentioned, he's like, but it's really sad. The place a friend of mine was planting a bunch of these, like, adopted, rescued trees. Surrey's going to build a project just like this one. And it's crazy. He said, it's crazy. Can you believe it? In a residential area. And I'm like, John, sorry, what do you think this is, by the way? He's like, oh, no. Everything here's been rezoned. I'm like, no. I live in a residential area. Everything is zoned R11, which to me, I'm not an expert, but I think that's still residential. But the thing is, the construction workers, or maybe it's the messaging coming from the developers, and I know it's the city inspectors believe some of this too, believe that no one lives here. They believe no one lives here. It's their work site. It literally is. I walk out onto my street and I'm on a work site. They don't think people live here. They don't think this is residential. They think it's their playground or their work site, and they treat it that way. And they know that they're going to go home to Abbotsford or Surrey or Langley, I've met some people, and not have to deal with this atrocity, really, this ugliness. And it's too bad because I really love the area. I have a lot of hope in the area. I think it can be really good, but I know for a fact that the city cannot handle what's currently happening. The kind of speculation that's happening just down my block too, of people speculating 12 stories in an area that's R11. It's not actually a thing that they can do there, but they're speculating it, and there's no way to manage all of it. I talk about safety issues at a site, and an inspector, I asked them, okay, do you know where the safety office is here so I can go mention it to them? And they're like, oh, no, I don't know. It's so big. I'm like, if the city inspectors don't know where safety offices is on construction sites, maybe we're a little over our head, eh? So, I really, really, really urge you guys to not put everyone else in the city through some of this stuff. It's already happening in the Cambie corridor. I'm sure people are going to start seeing it happen in the Broadway plan area. But can we just focus on doing what's currently happening right, or with a certain respect for the people that do live there? I'm sick and tired of hearing from city staff and construction workers that this whole area is going to be demolished and redeveloped, which is not true. That's not true. Sure, maybe 80% of my area is, but to say that it all is just actually not factual.
That's your time.
And that's
Thanks
the
very
attitude.
much for calling
Thank
in,
you.
Sarah. Appreciate
Take care.
it. Thanks very much. Speaker 75 is Janine Kemir. Oh, hi, Janine. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairperson and councillors. It is my great pleasure to be afforded the opportunity to speak here in chambers tonight. And please excuse me, I'm really nervous. My name is Janine Kemir, and I was born here 61 years ago, and I'm a current Free the Fern Board of Director at Large. And my support is under other for the ODP tonight. As an aside, I spoke on November 27th, 2025 as the 33rd speaker on the social housing initiative with respect to Champlain Heights and the existing co-op housing in opposition to the neighborhood center assignment with replacement building plans of up to 20-story towers as opposed to low-rise villages designation. Instead, I was in favor as a 4+ decade resident of the area, keeping the zoning as is and retaining the existing housing model of intermingled high dense townhouses, whether co-op, strata, GVRD rental, or BC housing. But tonight, however, I wish to speak on the ODP with respect to the parks and greenways and ongoing stewardship thereof. It was mentioned by staff yesterday in this revised ODP that the upkeep and restoration of parks and greenways, like the Champlain Heights Trail system that we represent, is an important priority, yet there is no budgeted funding for this indicated or planned for in the ODP. I was greatly disappointed with the decision to not approve a grant for Free the Fern Stewardship Society ongoing work of restoration of the Champlain Heights Trail system yesterday. It was voted by Council unanimously on October 8th, 2025 to retain this trail network for future Champlain Heights residents and generations and support Free the Fern's work to restore and sustain it. But then city staff denied our grant funding to retain and enumerate our one part-time leadership employee, our executive officer who is here tonight to speak, and the rest of the funds going to equipment, plants, website fees, knowledge sharer fees, workshops, and community events. This funding should be budgeted instead under the ODP Parks and Greenways, instead of us having to compete for funds through the highly competitive grant program, which the staff indicated is not focused currently on environment and sustainability, but more for social programs. The city is getting thousands of volunteer hours and saving so much money and ongoing work for the city crews who do not have the time to do this massive restoration project. I request a motion to add an annual budgeted amount to be given under the ODP for support of our stewardship groups for parks and greenways so we do not have to compete for grants prioritized for other initiatives. We are doing restoration and reconciliation work on behalf of the city. Also, we are identifying and preventing hazards and liability issues that invasive species running amok can cause for the city. I respectfully ask that you seriously consider Free the Fern Stewardship Society request for ongoing operational annual funding to continue this very necessary ongoing work unabated until completion, and then for ongoing maintenance for public use, education, and engagement thereafter. Thank you very much for hearing my concerns and considering our request tonight. And I just noticed I have a little bit of time. As a disabled person and almost a senior, the trails have been very, very therapeutic for me and my family and my friends. And I really hope that you prioritize it for budgetary consideration. So again, thank you very much for letting me come in and speak. And I'm very honored to be here. And sorry for the bad case of the nerves, but
thanks for coming in, Janine. Great job. And thank you for your stewardship of what, when I was a kid, was the Kerr Street dump. It's now Evercrawley Park. So thanks very much. Okay. Our next speaker is Stephen Lowy.
Hi there. Good evening.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, Council. I'm reserved all my criticism for the foundation of the plan, the OPD, and that's these three principles. And I only need to criticize the very first one. The very first one in this proposed plan is reconciliation. That is a serious mistake because it is not appropriate. It is not appropriate first principle for a 30-year city development plan. Now, I'm not a city planner, but I know enough to know that a development plan should be built on clear civic objectives, housing, infrastructure, transportation, economic vitality, and the well-being of residents. These are the goals that can be measured, debated, and evaluated over time. Reconciliation, by contrast, is a broad and contested political concept. It is not clearly defined, and it does not provide measurable planning outcomes. When a city organizes its entire long-term development framework around a concept that is undefined and politically charged, it risks turning planning into ideology rather than governance. And by the way, what in practical terms would success even mean? That Vancouver becomes the most reconciled city in the world? That is not a planning metric. More concerning is that most Vancouver residents are not even aware of the implications contained in this plan, including the formal assertion that all of Vancouver is unceded territory, and the possibility that major planning decisions may proceed with limited public input while significantly affecting how people live in the city. Regardless of where people stand politically, they deserve transparency and meaningful participation in decisions that shape the next 30 years of Vancouver's development. This is not a minor policy, Council. It is a generational framework for the future of this city. Plans of this magnitude should rest on clear civic priorities and broad public understanding, not on these vague principles that many residents have never even been asked to consider. Council, the responsibility tonight is simple. Pause, engage the public openly, and build a development plan grounded in practical civic goals that unite residents rather than divide them. Because the 30-year plan for Vancouver should first and foremost serve the people who live here, and it should do so with their full knowledge and consent. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Speaker 77 is Grace Umbrato.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I am Grace Numbrato. I am founder and executive director of Free the Fern Stewardship Society and a local resident. I'm here today to speak specifically with concerns about the city's plan to implement an ecological corridors across the city. Of note, I was actually an advisor on this plan. I served on the Ecological Inventory and Networking Committee that the city had created with local stewardship experts in the area to advise on this plan. And today I spoke with the lead planner, Joseph Tohill, on this plan. And I inquired whether there is a dedicated budget to establish and steward these proposed ecological corridors. Joseph Tohill informed me that there is no such dedicated budget in the ODP, but that the ODP could be used by citizens to advocate for future city spending for the environment. So despite the ODP describing, quote, climate protection and restored ecosystems as one of its 3 big ideas, the city currently does not prioritize spending on the environment. There's currently no operational funding dedicated for environmental nonprofits in the city who wish to do stewardship work on ecological corridors. Only yesterday, I spoke to council to advocate for operational funding for my own nonprofit to continue stewardship work along the Champlain Heights Trails, which is listed in the ODP as an existing ecological corridor. Since 2021, our nonprofit has brought together over 1,700 event volunteers, removed over 240 cubic meters of invasive species, and planted over 4,000 native plants along this trail system. Unfortunately, the council did not pass this amendment to approve funding for our ongoing stewardship effort. So if there is currently no dedicated city funding to support our own stewardship work, how then does the city propose to establish even more ecological corridors across the city? Ecological corridors cannot steward themselves. While many caring community members will dedicate their time by volunteering to remove invasives and replanting native plants, there needs to be dedicated funding to recruit these volunteers, manage the stewardship events, purchase the plants, and the tools. So you can have a pretty picture of a city covered in ecological corridors. And I will be the first to say that I love that dream. But without dedicated budget, it is nothing but a dream and will never become a reality. If this is in fact an official development plan, we need a plan for implementation, including a dedicated budget. I want to say thank you to Councillors Lucy Maloney for coming out to our fall planting event, as well with Councillor Lenny Joe as well, and for continued dedication towards supporting our stewardship effort. I also wish to say thank you to Councillor Pete Fry for making the motion on October 8th to protect our Champlain Heights trails, and every councillor in this room who unanimously voted in favor of that motion and ongoing stewardship support of our efforts. It takes bold action like this to truly achieve the goal of being the greenest city. And it will take dedicated funding to see that vision into the future. Thank you.
For coming in. Okay, Speaker 78 is Owen Brady. Owen, are you there?
Not on the line.
Okay, Speaker 79 is Michelle Travis. Michelle, are you there?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Michelle Travis, and I'm a resident of Vancouver. I oppose this proposal. What really troubles me most about it is the stripping away of public hearings for certain projects. A city staffer noted yesterday that for some proposals, council will not hear public comment at all. I understand this is being prompted by a provincial directive, but I find this very concerning. Under the proposed guidelines, a developer could propose a tower where at least 50% of the residential gross floor area will be dedicated to high-end, ultra-luxury residential strata, and that could be waved through without a public hearing if it's consistent with the ODP. Residents who strongly oppose a proposal like this will be promptly ignored. I question why City Hall would allow this. I think City Hall should be demanding the developers build what our residents need and not just what satisfies their investors. That's how we've ended up with a glut of residential stratas. Council has asked clarifying questions of staff about this proposal and about public engagement, but I'm a bit concerned that Council may not be troubled enough about some of these changes. One could get the impression that too much public input is a meddlesome thing. And questions posed to city staff suggesting the public is misinformed, I think ignores some of the concerns, some of the appropriate concerns that folks have been raising. I agree with the letter submitted by the group of 30 urban planners, architects, and academics. The concerns they raised should not be dismissed by council or city staff. I don't think city staff should pat themselves on the back by telling the public that we'll still be able to write to council if we've got concerns about proposed developments. That's a small consolation when the public wants to have their concerns registered by council and city staff face-to-face. Public hearings are an important means to do that. City staff say they have no viable options with regard to this proposed provincial directive, but 16 municipalities have found a way to push back on directives with a request for judicial review. I'd like to understand why City Hall hasn't pushed back on some of these. Opposition to this isn't about NIMBYism or being opposed to change. You know, I believe many who oppose this proposal want to see the city focus on creating real affordable housing that allows people of all income levels to continue to live here. Rigorous public input keeps City Hall accountable to us, the voters. And I guess also concerning is just the recent Auditor General's report regarding how the city didn't maximize value for land sales or failed to collect community amenity contributions owed by certain developers has had the impact, I think, of eroding trust that City Hall can really deliver what we need from developers. And I tend to think that developers are salivating at the prospect of what the ODP can bring in the future. I work for Unite Here Local 40, which represents hospitality workers who work here and want to live here. But even members who make a decent wage struggle to find housing that enables them to stay in the city and raise families here. And I'm not convinced that this ODP helps ease the pathway to affordable housing for them. The city is increasingly streamlining development to ease supply and make it easier for developers to build, but that doesn't change the fact that many average or lower income working people and their families cannot afford to live here. I strongly urge council to push back on the province's directive and to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, speaker number 80 is Randy Helton. Randy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello?
Okay.
Test.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, my name is Randy Helson. I'm a citizen of Vancouver, and I have 3 points for tonight. First of all, as you know, the reason that we're all here tonight is 100% due to the provincial legislation going back to 2022. Then in 2024, Bill 18 amended the Vancouver Charter. This legislation was just barely discussed in legislature and under the shadow of non-disclosure agreements. It may be legal, but I believe it's illegitimate legislation. And even the deadline for June 30th this year for the interim ODP is imposed by the province artificially. And as the previous speaker mentioned, some municipalities are fighting back, and I do hope the City of Vancouver, the City Council, will stand up and speak up to the people of Vancouver, speak truth to power, and tell the province we need more time to get this done properly. The second thing is that the reason for that is the prohibition of public hearings under the ODP is based on the presumption that there's broad public buy-in, which is not the case right now. The second thing is something I hope you will take very seriously, and I hope that the council or staff can prove this to be wrong. But if you approve of the ODP, I'm very concerned that major rezonings could go through council with not a word spoken in the city council, regular council meeting. I've been watching council for 15 years, and I've seen 4 mayors come and go, 5 councils come and go. And I've seen many times when very serious issues are adopted on consent by the council, with nothing said but the name of the bylaw or the issue. So I think this scenario could actually happen, and I hope you can tell me that's wrong. A referral report prepared by staff with little or no council involvement for a major rezoning consistent with the ODP could appear on a council agenda on a Thursday evening with no prior public notice. Then, just a few business days later, the next Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, in a regular council meeting, the council could pass the paper, the recommendations by staff, on the consent agenda with no discussion. If that is done, and that would be a choice of the council, if no one calls it for discussion. If that is done, there would be no staff presentation, no question and answer session, no debate, no discussion, no explicit council vote even on that one item. On all of this, there would be no chance for the public to speak to the elected officials about that particular rezoning. I have been following the affairs for many years, and I've seen this pattern before. So I do hope that before council votes on the ODP, that they get explicitly stated how the scenario is going to be prevented. Is it written explicitly in bylaw or legislation that we won't see massive rezonings approved on consent agenda without full examination and public disclosure in public? And my third and final point is that there's been a lot of input from very valuable input from many sources, including the Housing Reset Expert Group, from the Coalition of Vancouver Neighborhoods, and many of the speakers. I hope that the council will take all of that into review very carefully, respectfully, and on top of that, bring a revised ODP back to the public and get broad public awareness and broad public buy-in so that the people of Vancouver can support it for the next 30 years. I think you will find if you do that, you will have much less controversy when it comes to public hearings in the future, or any major policy decisions. So those are my 3 points. Especially, I hope you look into this risk that there could be major decisions made by council without serious discussion in the public view. Thank you very much. And please do not approve the ODP as it is.
Thanks for calling in. Next speaker is Rochelle Davidson.
Hi. Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Hi. I just I didn't know about this meeting until a couple days ago. So and I know a lot of people, and they didn't know about this meeting. So just to emphasize what other speakers have said, is there hasn't been public inclusion in a fairly catastrophic, potentially, plan for the city of Vancouver. I lived here all my life. I have also participated in municipal affairs on and off throughout my life. Shortly after the Olympics, etc., maybe 2015, I have backed out, partly because it doesn't feel like it's accessible to the average person. So it's just insane. I went to some meetings before the Olympics regarding Riley Park, and back then we were really included in the planning process, as opposed to being told what the plan is after being developed behind closed doors without consultation to the shareholders. And the shareholders of Vancouver are the residents, both owners and renters. We're all paying property tax. I don't know what you get each year with the property tax, but we should be the first stakeholders that are consulted, and not, for example, developers or even the current premier of BC. So anyways, I am obviously opposed, as are the majority of speakers tonight. Just want to point that out. And also, interestingly, everyone who said they supported the ODP followed it with such a list of cautions and amendments and rewrites and whatnot that essentially it kind of negated their support of it. But even those that say they are in support, and some of them I suspect might not be, in fact, and might not be fully informed, and I'm not saying I am fully informed, but anyways, they're not really in support. This is a city that has to, like any other place, has to be livable. I am going around Vancouver and looking at what's going up. And when the towers go up, a gray, dismal city already becomes grayer and more dismal. The streetscapes look like something out of Blade Runner, which was, at the time that I thought it was a very depressing and hopefully not a realistic view of the future. The other thing is there's been talk about how the tall buildings will block out light, and when they block out light, plants don't grow, trees don't grow, and people don't grow. We're all going to suffer in this dreary, wet, concrete jungle that is being erected. There's so many things I could say, but everyone has said things so eloquently. There's just two things I kind of want to say, well, no, maybe three. We really need to protect our trees. Those trees that we have are an investment of decades and millions of dollars. We also need to protect the cheaper, affordable housing, which is the older houses. And the older houses aren't just having one family, they have multiple families. Another thing that they have is green space. As the city has increased its density, I've been noticing with Canuck Park, Queen Elizabeth Park, and Stanley Park, that as the density increases without accompanying yards or courtyards or green spaces, the public parks are being used naturally enough for people to enjoy them. And so there's not a sufficient, and there hasn't been for some time, a sufficient protection of what I call the unaccounted for parks in Vancouver, which are the green spaces. Hello?
Yes?
I was cut off?
Oh, you're still there. Keep going.
Yeah. Hi, sorry. The thing is this it's not going to be a livable city. I don't think it is. People who can stand to live in a 200 to 400 square foot box on the 99th floor, the 60th floor, are not going to be able to live there once they get additional house people in there, whether it's family or whatever. It's not realistic. And the other thing is this: I don't think we have a housing
That's your
crisis.
time, ma'am. Thanks very much for calling in. Thank you. Okay. Our next speaker is Patricia Gu. Patricia, are you there?
Yes, hello?
Go right ahead.
Hi, so you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hi, my name is Patricia Gu, and I'm a resident of West End's Alberni Corridor, and I ask Council to oppose this motion. So I noticed yesterday that the West End is not even a proposed village on the ODP map. We West Enders are not the same as the general downtown core. We are West Enders. I am also a member of the City of Vancouver Accessibility Committee and am a widow in my 40s. I'm speaking on behalf of just myself this evening. So I'm a person with disabilities and almost died during the heat dome in 2021. I now live in a 36-story condo that I own, but I will not live above the 10th floor. It was built in the late 90s and is an example of Vancouverism architectural style. It is a fully residential strata, not one of these combined mixed section stratas. It has a walk score of 100, large setbacks, parking, storage, a human-scaled streetscape, a mix of condos, townhomes, and heritage building on site, large gardens, mature trees that support birds, public-facing artwork, part of my strata, several fountains to support bird life. I bought in here for all of these reasons. I would not buy somewhere that is being built right now with no setbacks, no frontage, no birds, no trees. So where I live epitomizes what I love about Vancouver. Even as a landscape architecture student, my strata was a precedent for what good urban design can be. The proposed ODP does not respect this idea of Vancouverism. And even now, all of the heavy trucks driving to and from the construction site are ruining the roads and infrastructure. I have the following points to make. I'll try to be quick so I can get through them. 1, you might not necessarily have to adopt this ODP. The town of View Royal, being led by Mayor Sid Tobias, is challenging it via judicial review, as others have mentioned. Vancouver could do the same. We shouldn't just blindly follow what we are being told to do. 2, we are on the Pacific Flyway, and I do not see anything in this ODP that gives proper consideration of that. The ODP can end up ruining and destroying species at risk and what the other unique wildlife that we share the city with. Also, the Canada birdwatching tourism market generated a revenue of $2.4 billion in 2024, according to Grandview Research. Vancouver gets a large portion of that. And we need a robust patch corridor system, not a vague concept of green corridors. 3, this ODP contravenes Dark Sky International best practices. There is health risks to not have darkness at night. And this ODP guarantees that we will lose more of our night sky. 4, as a person with multiple disabilities, I see blanket statements about equity in this ODP, but nothing that really addresses universal design properly. I sit on the City of Vancouver Accessibility Committee, and we have not been at the table about this ODP. It's being designed without us. Vancouver currently has some of the best air in the world. We are envied all over the world. That is why so many asthmatics and people like me with autoimmune issues flock here. We move here so we can use less medication and have a better quality of life without indignity, wood smoke, and smog. We help keep the standard high for everyone else who doesn't even have to think about things like, will I be able to breathe today, or will I go to the ER today in their daily life. Other cities can aspire to be like us and follow us without Vancouver having to dilute itself and destroy what we have. 5, I do not see much in this ODP about housing quality or accessible housing to meet an aging population or people with disabilities. Many of these new builds are winter builds. They're made of moldy fir framing and OSB board that, as someone who grew up on a farm, we would not even house our animals in such slapshod construction. 6, what about quality of life? We need access to civic life in the real world. We need access to nature and views of the sky, places to meet friends and be healthy, medical services, schools, places to have art and music. Even in the last few years, we've lost the art gallery off-site since the Hyatt bought that site. We've lost countless other public-facing assets. Remember Vancouverism? 7, we do not need to grow forever. We cannot. I hear commenters who support the ODP saying that people are commuting too far away from their jobs.
Thank you, Speaker. That's your time for tonight. Appreciate you calling.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Clerk, are there any additional speakers in the chamber? Okay. Are there any additional speakers on the line? Okay. This is the third and final call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call in toll free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and displayed during the recess. We will now take a 2-minute recess for any additional speakers to call in or come forward to the podium. Thank you. Okay, we'll resume the meeting here. Clerk, do we have any speakers in the chamber or online?
We do not.
Okay. Seeing no further speakers, the speakers list is now closed. Clerk, has there been a large volume of public comments received on this item since 5 p.m.?
There has not been.
Okay, seeing that there are few or no public comments received after 5 p.m., I'm now closing the receipt of public comments. Does staff have any closing comments?
Good evening. Thank you. Yes, we do.
All right, go right ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Lil Ronalds with Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability. Staff heard a few key themes in Council's questions and the Speaker's comments, and we'd like to provide some brief clarification on 4 points. What the ODP does. The ODP is the formalization of our land use vision for the City of Vancouver, our Vancouver Plan. It is our collective North Star, and there is great value in a holistic, consolidated citywide plan. The ODP provides greater clarity on the city's land use objectives and helps streamline housing delivery. It includes the urban structure strategy, which is the high-level and long-term guide for how neighborhoods may evolve over time. And we are introducing the generalized land use map that consolidates decades of existing policy into a single parcel-based map. From the past, the GLU reflects policies from 20 area plans, 16 policy statements, and 12 existing ODPs, along with citywide policies like the secured rental policy. The GLU will evolve as we complete new area plans and policies, guided by the directions set in the urban structure strategy and policies throughout the Vancouver ODP. Villages is an upcoming example of that evolution, a concept in the Vancouver Plan activated through an area plan process with community engagement, and will, if Council adopts it, be reflected in the ODP's GLU. Beyond Council-adopted policies or plans, the ODP does not offer any new development options, and it does not affect zoning or development entitlements in any way. Number 2, engagement for Vancouver Plan and the ODP. Some concerns were raised about engagement. Vancouver Plan involved one of the city's most extensive engagement processes with a strong focus on reaching traditionally underrepresented voices, and this is reflected in the 3 foundational principles of reconciliation, equity, and resilience. The ODP consultation built on that work and focused on technical requirements outlined in the Vancouver Charter. This included engagement with school boards, local nations, urban Indigenous organizations, agencies like TransLink, Vancouver Coastal Health, and Metro Vancouver. In total, 127 organizations were invited to review the draft ODP, as was the broader public. Feedback from participating groups and the public review last October is summarized in the staff report. Number 3, how public input will continue. The ODP sets the high-level framework for growth, but detailed planning will continue through area planning and rezoning processes. Initiatives like Rupert Renfrew and the Villages Planning Program will involve deeper neighborhood-level engagement and consider local character and context in those plans. Any future area plan changes to land use would require an ODP amendment and a council decision at a public hearing. And lastly, number 4, rezonings and public hearings. For rezonings that need an ODP amendment, the process will look much the same as it does today and include a public hearing with speakers. For those that don't need an amendment and are more than 50% residential and consistent with the ODP, there will still be a public notification, a Shape Your City page, opportunity for written comments, and in some cases a virtual open house. Council will still hear the item and as elected officials make a decision which will consider the public's input. To conclude, the ODP is a provincially required document that has a June 30th, 2026 deadline for delivery. It reflects decades of community contributions in one comprehensive statutory plan that will serve as the new North Star for the land use planning in the city. It reflects the values of Vancouver's diverse residents and will be amended over time to ensure relevance and reflect any shift in our collective challenges, opportunities, and priorities. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thanks very much. Okay, council members, do you have any final questions for staff? Councillor Dominato?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just circle back. We had a resident, I think it was Alexander earlier, who was asking about missing middle and just where he can see that in the context of our planning work. Could staff just speak briefly to that? I have a couple questions, but I think to address that question of how we see that in the evolution of the city, the missing middle component.
Thank you for the question. The missing middle would be a number of different typologies we would characterize from multiplex to up to 6 stories. And we would see that in the multiplex neighborhood types in the GLU as well as in the villages. The villages planning program underway is an excellent example of where we're going to be introducing more missing middle housing types throughout the city.
Okay, thank you. One of the things I noted in some of the comments over the last couple of days around this was, some residents were indicating that, they weren't aware of the public hearing, they weren't aware of the scope of the ODP and the Vancouver plan. And I'm curious if, I think there's some reasons, this has been a prolonged with COVID, it kind of interrupted some of the Vancouver planning work and ODP work, but what do you see as some of the opportunities, how we might communicate in future around these opportunities? Sorry, it's probably not a very clear question. I'm tired. It seems to me that there are people who seem to be unaware, and I know we're trying to do as much outreach as possible, but are there any things, other jurisdictions we've been looking at where they might be doing something different to make people aware of these opportunities to participate?
Thanks for the question. I think there's, many different ways we can reach communities for different types of area planning processes. We used, social media for this. We used, public notice in newspapers. We have posters in all of the community centers and libraries. We did pop-up events in locations that are sort of high traffic areas to kind of, build that awareness. We're always looking at new ways. Our area planning processes are really where we find communities, the scale of change really connects with community members most. Those planning programs tend to do, even more types of engagement, whether it's, reaching out specifically to PACs and schools and notices on school districts if they'll allow us, all sorts of tools that we can explore, and always welcome to hear from council and suggestions you might hear or have. We definitely always want to make sure that we're doing every effort to reach as many people as we can.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, it's also a city of over 600,000 people, and so I appreciate that. I do want to circle back as well. There was a representative from Strand addressed the public hearing the other day and raised the subject of rezoning that was unanimously approved here, and then raised the subject of that I think condition of that was there needed to be an amendment to the regional context statement, which we're dealing with this evening as part of the interim ODP. And I'm just curious, do we have an ability to propose that amendment here this evening, and how we would go about doing that? What guidance you have for us?
Thank you. I'm going to pass that over to Templar.
Thanks for the question. Thank you, Templar, Director of Rezoning. So the decision from the January 27th public hearing was to approve the rezoning subject to holding a public hearing on the RCS designation change. Tonight's public hearing was specifically on Vancouver Plan, which includes the RCS designation, and through representations from the public, that question was raised. So it is on the floor. It is something that Council has purview to consider tonight. In the absence of that, we would have to hold another public hearing on that same topic at a later date.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we could move that with appropriate language and could get some assistance with that.
Correct. We can help with that if you need to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Ask my own questions here. First of all, there was, we have a couple of speakers that came in from the Champlain Heights talking about ecological connections across the city. I think I know the answer to this, but they were specifically asking that we allot some kind of funding. This is not the process for necessarily making those kinds of grants decision. Is that correct?
Correct. This wouldn't be the occasion to do that.
And just to close the loop on that one, these ecological corridors, the speaker talked about needing volunteers and supporting ongoing maintenance of these things. This would be not necessarily fall under the purview of the ODP, but it would definitely be something either Park Board or the city would be required to maintain and steward as well, right?
Yes, correct. That work is continually underway, and that would be the avenue for that. Correct.
Thanks very much. We had the chair of the OPIAC committee calling, just underlining the need to make sure that the ODP enforces and enhances our age-friendly goals, age-friendly city goals. Does the ODP allow for that?
Most definitely, yeah. I think you'd see through the different policy area chapters, there's, whether it's transportation speaks to age-friendly, whether our community infrastructure, I think you'd see that pervasive in the different policy areas.
There was some strong rhetoric from a few of the speakers, one using the word that the ODP would obliterate neighborhoods, using the example of tower development, chain commercial stores, the lack of setbacks, and the loss of tree canopy. Can we do a little bit of a reality check? Does the ODP drive necessarily some of those things and have that kind of a negative downward effect? Because boy, oh boy, there's a lot of people that believe that or who've called in over the last couple of days.
Thanks for the question. I would suggest that the ODP very much counters that in terms of, the ODP includes a tree canopy increased target in it. It speaks to, the importance of green spaces and trees within our neighborhoods. And in terms of built form, again, the ODP doesn't itself enable anything other than what's already been approved through other area planning processes. So I would suggest that that's a mischaracterization or misunderstanding of the ODP. So no, I wouldn't suggest that is going to be the outcome.
Okay, and there was a number of people that mentioned how expensive housing is Vancouver. That's just a reality. We know that has been the case, and we've seen a generation of the growth of the cost of residential properties in the city of Vancouver. Does the ODP somehow maintain and push that reality forward, or does it try to respond to it?
I can pass this over to Dan, or Dan, would you like to take this one?
Sure thing, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Dan Garrison, Director of Housing Policy and Regulation. The ODP continues the city's work to address the housing crisis by putting in place the framework that will guide us in the future to allow the types of housing that needs to be supplied. Like, there is a housing policy chapter within the ODP, which essentially is the same chapter that was adopted as part of the Vancouver plan brought forward into the ODP document. So the same kinds of policies and strategies that were embedded in the Vancouver plan that are embedded in Housing Vancouver are carried forward into the ODP.
And it would seem to be since the early part of this decade that housing prices have generally been flat, or actually in some cases going down over the last certainly year or 18 months.
Yeah, certainly in the last couple of years, both on the ownership side in the sort of strata condominium market, but also more recently as we've seen rental supply come online and some of the demand side measures the federal government's taken, we have seen a leveling off and some declines at the top end of the rental market as well, yes.
Just wanted to finally just ask questions about population growth. It looks like my timer is coming up, so I'll just let this next person speak. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. First of all, I think you've done an exceptional job in presenting, so a lot of information, really appreciate it. Picking up on Councillor Claasson's, do you want to, I suspect his question around population growth is, do we take a sort of a fairly balanced view with respects to modeling? And although, yes, we've seen a dip, I think in BC, Vancouver didn't see that same dip. And so are we taking all those factors into consideration?
Thanks for the question. I'm going to pass that over to Joseph Tohill.
Thanks for your question, Councillor. So certainly when it comes to the projections, the ODP, the appendices include that appendix from the consultant doing the projections, and included all the projections from Metro Vancouver, BC Stats, as well as the city's own projections. And it acknowledged that there are differences between the projections, and they're all included in there as references, noting that neither one of them is necessarily correct. They're just showing
There are scenarios for planning for informing purposes, and of course, we'll adapt over time. Fair?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I want to pick up on the sort of the questions around not just missing middle, but just this, just for absolute clarity, this notion that this is somehow allowing towers everywhere. And so I look, for example, at the GLU map, which was on page 14 of your presentation, and I see, when I look at this, I see a lot of the lighter yellow, the middle yellow, which is the residential multiplex, the residential low rise, and then some mid rise. And in terms of the total landmass, when you look at this map, there's still, I think, fair to say, a large portion of the city that is zoned for that lower density and missing middle. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that's a fair statement in the GLU. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a commentary on towers everywhere, this plan does not enable that.
No, this plan doesn't enable anything, again, that hasn't already been approved by council.
Okay. And then you commented around sort of a number of different policies, and it was asked earlier, building on Councillor Dominato's question around strategies to deliver on the missing middle. We have existing ones and things like multiplex. We also have other work. I know there's other policies embedded. We're looking at things like single egress stairs. I know that's some work the planning team is undertaking that could provide things like more livable, larger units, the ability to do them on smaller lots and avoid land assembly. So as though that kind of work and those policies happen, would those also be connected into the ODP if this moves ahead?
I'll pass that to Neil.
Thank you for the question. Neil Rashowi, Director of Community Planning. Yes, absolutely it will. You'll see the single egress stair coming forward as part of the Villages program this June for referral, and that will be included as a housing option throughout the 600 blocks that are covered by the Villages plan.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then can you comment a bit around, with respect, building on the affordability concerns, which are very real, around also two-part question. One is that if we don't have a plan, if we don't provide a strategy for growth and we were to build less, we don't think that housing would necessarily get less expensive. And then should we be looking at this plan, looking for sort of a comment on that? And should we be looking at this plan as really a guide around tenure, but then we still continue to work on affordability, and that can include senior government advocacy for funding. It can include how we execute our options on things like inclusionary zoning for requiring below market percentage of units, those kinds of things.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. In terms of your first question, certainly in the presence of ongoing demand, if we do not increase supply, it will create upward pressure on the existing housing stock. It will not become more affordable. Naturally, it will continue to see the price escalation we had seen over the previous couple of decades. So the process of going through a planning process like this, the area plans to follow in terms of enabling additional housing supply are really important in terms of addressing the affordability piece. In terms of this, I'm sorry, I forget the second half of your question.
It was really around the affordability, how we would continue to work for affordability. So if this like tenure and essentially density, that we can, there's still a lot of affordability work, and just recapping some of those efforts.
Absolutely, there is. And in terms of there is a housing chapter within this plan which speaks to that, which speaks to work with other levels of government, the importance of both advocacy on the part of the city and partnership to achieve the deeper levels of affordability.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the answers. I'll leave it there.
Thanks very much. Councillor Zhou.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so to follow up the question regarding the population projection. So this population projection for ODP is based on the Vancouver plan in 2022, right?
The population projections have been somewhat adjusted. They have been somewhat adjusted.
Okay, based on the new the federal government immigration policy, or?
I'll pass that over to Joseph.
Yes, thanks for your question, Councillor. Yes, all the population projections, both from BC Stats, Metro, and then accordingly City of Vancouver, were updated based on those changes to federal immigration policy. So those have been incorporated.
Okay, so if we do this ODP update every 5 years, can we also update the population projection every 5 years?
I would suggest that certainly the population projections are something that would be revisited and done again, and incorporating new data and policy changes as needed to make them look into the future based on those variables.
Okay, so that means if there's further change regarding our immigration policy, our ODP in the future, when we do the 5 years update, will reflect the latest policy.
I think certainly we would look at, if there's any updates and any impacts on the methodology used for the projections, we would certainly look to see what updates might need to be made.
Okay, perfect. To follow up another question that Councillor Kirby asked regarding some comments about tower everywhere, can you tell us what percentage of the parcel in the city, residential parcel, they are considered R5 based on this ODP, and what are considered R3 and R4?
I don't have that information available. We can certainly provide that at a later time, but I wouldn't have that on hand.
Yeah, just ballpark. Do I have any ballpark number? Because I'm seeing the map, just very, very small percentage. Actually, you can build R5 there. So again, I'm just trying to validate the comments regarding tower everywhere. If we have that number.
I think that would take us some time to calculate. The R5 would be the new district that was just introduced in Cambie and Broadway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's certainly a minority of our land base today that is enabling of towers, principally within the metro core and associated with TOA areas. I will say, to address the question about the future vision, because the Vancouver Plan ODP is also about the future. One of the important moves it makes in its more distributed growth pattern is filling in that missing middle and filling in. For a long time, I would suggest Vancouver built a lot at the very low scale, duplex and the like, and towers, and not a lot in between, and it was heavily geographically concentrated. The land use vision here fundamentally is about more distributed growth, and that growth throughout the lion's share, I would say, of the geography of the city is at the low to mid scale as part of this vision, and that will be implemented through initiatives like villages, future neighborhood centers that are very much in that middle band. Overall, the majority of the land base in the city over time, as we plan, will be mid and low rise, while other areas that support high rise will continue to develop high rise.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So if we have that number, so in our communication strategy, so we can probably alleviate some of the fears for the community seeing that towers everywhere. So just want that number to be public to all the community members.
Thank you. We'll definitely look into that.
Okay. My last question is, see if there's some concern regarding the livability about shattering the tower setback. So see if one project is aligned with the height and density in ODP, but there might be some issue with the shattering setback. Is that project considered as ODP compliant project?
Just a point of clarification, the ODP doesn't include anything on density. The ODP, the GLU just speaks to height and use. So a project would be measured, and a rezoning application would be measured on those two things, height and use. That's what's articulated in the GLU. So we wouldn't take into consideration the density. The GLU also does direct, so in terms of ODP compliance, yes, if it's compliant on those two measures, it would be considered compliant. That said, the ODP also has policies that redirect to those area plans to really account for and address those nuances and those particulars that you've addressed, such as shadowing.
And at that shadowing, like the community plan stage, the community member will also be able to provide input.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. That's all my question.
Thanks very much. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, so despite the concerns around the rigidity of this plan and whatnot, it's surprisingly ambiguous in some places where it doesn't have like hard targets where we look at like for instance, green space or recreational facility that we need X amount per population growth or anything like that. How does this work inform that kind of like performance metric?
Thanks for the question. I think this work is a very strategic step forward to informing that kind of work. It does articulate sort of that shorter term expectation around growth and change through the GLU, as well as that longer term sort of insight into that longer 50 to 100 year in our urban structure strategy. And something like this can be a very useful tool to help guide where we think growth and change is going to happen. And when we compare those to sort of existing facility conditions and needs, et cetera, that could be considered through, future capital planning program to help council in that decision making.
So what you're saying, where it lacks the specificity, it's still foundational to us thinking about those investments, or whatever the case may be.
I would suggest it does.
Yes, and by that same token, with our friends from Free the Fern here, who are are advocating for stewardship for ecological initiatives and that kind of thing, which is 100% supportable, and I think we all agree with that. This is foundational to a future ask of that, let's say, because we've already kind of articulated this is what we are looking to achieve through the framework.
Absolutely. This really sets up that conversation to, help us determine where we want to make those investments.
Excellent, thank you. And one of the other pieces that we heard, fairly often in the conversations, and I think Elizabeth Murphy was talking about referring it back for democratic participation or participatory planning process. As we discussed, this is an interim plan, and how do we amend the ODP in the future? I know it's going to be through a public hearing, but where is the nuance to the participatory planning as we go ongoing? And we know that this is going to change over the years, and obviously 5-year review. And how do we accommodate that future engagement?
Thanks for the question. I think, this is not a set in stone document. It is, the last slide of the presentation yesterday, he said this is a living plan. And we know it needs to evolve and change and adapt as our priorities and challenges change and shift. In terms of participation, any ODP amendment requires, under the legislation, that we engage and consult with community members, agencies, et cetera. I think those are articulated in the council report. That participatory type planning is something that can be explored. I'm assuming they're looking at that deeper level of engagement. Again, we can continue to explore with council in future planning processes such as villages, neighborhood centers moving forward, different tools to engage communities in ways that are meaningful. There's lots of opportunities that will come in the future.
And I appreciate you answering these, because it's really just to get that clarity for folks who've been paying attention to this and have concerns, and it's important to kind of reiterate it. And I guess my last one is we had a conversation, gosh, it's such a blur. This has been a really busy week, but we had a conversation around council priorities that weren't being followed through on Tuesday. And one of the questions I think I had for Josh was around the stratification of laneway homes and stuff, in which we would see more typically in the single family neighborhood. And there's work coming forward. It's not right away. How would that mesh with this work?
I'll pass that over to Josh.
Would it require an amendment to the ODP, or is that independent of this?
I don't think it would, because it would be a rule nested within the zoning district of multiplex and the regulation in there. I don't think that would track back to a change at the level of the ODP.
Right. So, and then similarly, achieving various forms of missing middle that are kind of within that general bucket is fine. Anything significantly different, like for instance, the single egress stair buildings that might.
Yeah. So again, the categories in the land use plan are typically about use and height, and so the details, for example, about like lot width requirements or emergency access wouldn't live or be reflected in for example, the GLU. They would live within zoning and development bylaw, building code, those types of things.
That's your time.
Thanks
a lot. Okay, Councillor Maloney.
Thanks. I'd just like to clarify a couple of matters that I heard from public speakers. Firstly, about school sites. I heard two concerns that I think are worth addressing. The first was a concern that the ODP waters down protections or makes it easier to divest or repurpose school land. Could you speak to that briefly?
Thank you for the question. The opposite is true. So in fact, the ODP adds an additional layer of protection on school sites that the city of Vancouver has never had before. Unusually or atypical to other municipalities, the underlying zoning of school sites in Vancouver varies from R11 to RM5. And those are the existing development entitlements. But what the, other municipalities, their zoning of school sites would be institutional and allow only institutional. But what the ODP does, it adds a layer of protection that says any change of use beyond existing zoning must undergo a public process and an ODP amendment. So that's that's a new addition and an added layer of protection for school sites that we haven't had in the past.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Also, the other part of the concern I had, I heard in relation to schools was a lack of planning in relation to the need for more schools. Could you speak to that point?
Thanks for the question. We do work collaboratively with the school districts to look at our growth projections as well as their anticipated school needs. Again, this is outside of the purview of the municipality to provide for school sites. What we do is, we continue to collaborate on data sharing, sharing our growth expectations or sort of estimates rather, and work with them to, really take into account those anticipated growth. They have changed. They are taking into consideration more of our long-term growth, and they have acknowledged that in our collaborations with them over the past few years, that in the past they haven't necessarily looked at our growth in their long-range capital planning, but they are doing that now, and that's a nod in the right direction. And we'll continue to work with them through the challenges of providing adequate schools.
So that's really in the jurisdiction of school board.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Now, I've also heard some concerns about the park board not being consulted with. Could you speak to that?
We have park staff on our interdepartmental team, and we've worked really closely with them. And the park staff have been liaising with the park board, including a memo that they sent to the park board in October.
Okay. I've heard some concerns that there wasn't enough consideration of the expansion of green space and community amenities. Could you speak to that, please?
Thank you. The plan does have a robust parks chapter. It does identify existing park spaces. It does identify the need to look at expanding green spaces where appropriate. And it does also identify future parks that have been secured through other planning processes. So it does include that level of detail. And it does speak to the desire to see, additional green spaces, whether that's through a dedicated park or through other measures integrated into our neighborhoods. But again, something like that, the ODP doesn't preclude a park. Parks are allowed, would be permitted anywhere. But so, if the city were to want to add a park, that would be consistent with the ODP.
So what would be the appropriate process apart from the ODP to identify and progress with additional parks in areas that are likely to experience growth?
Yeah, we do have Parks Board on the line, so I will pass that over to.
Thanks.
Tina?
I've only got 30 seconds, so just warning.
Hi, yeah, thanks. I can jump in there. Tina Mack, Park Board Director of Planning and Park Development. A number of ways which we can pursue additional parks and do pursue additional parks. So as Lil explained, the ODP is kind of that master land use plan, and you see in the park map where future parks are proposed to some of those large development sites, future rezoning sites, East Fraserlands, for example. So either working through the development community as those large sites evolve, like in East Fraserlands, Citylands in Southeast Falls Creek, for example, and through our acquisition plan. So we have our Van Play master plan that seeks to provide new park spaces in park deficit areas or to complete assembly. So park acquisition and land use zoning. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry about
Thanks
that.
very much.
Running out of.
Councillor Orr.
Yeah, can you remind me what the answer was on the question of if this is an excessive interpretation or excessive literal interpretation of the provincial mandate? I can't quite remember what the answer was to that.
Thanks for the question. If I recall, there was more to the question last night, or there was more context around the question in terms of what the literal interpretation was relating to. So
Yeah, it was just like sort of like if like, like the province has made us do this and just sort of like around like, are we just taking this too literally? And is there I think that was the question. You don't have to, I can skip that. Just, yeah, like in terms of what Adrienne Carr was saying, with, that it's been a long process, it's been 2 years, whatever, in that we can't refer this back to staff, for example. Like, could you speak to that? Like, the June deadline, like we can't do that.
sorry, I'm not sure. Do you mind repeating the question if we can't? Sorry.
I think what she was suggesting correctly is that it would be difficult to refer back to staff for more work and yet still meet the provincial deadline.
Okay, yeah, I think that's good. And then can you remind us again what happens if we don't pass? I believe the phrase was, if we were to arm wrestle with the province, we wouldn't have an arm, I believe was.
I am going to pass it over to legal services to respond to that.
Hi, it's Grant Murray, one of the lawyers with the city. The legislation doesn't say what will happen if we don't obey the law, but I'm unaware of the city ever taking the position that it would not. I know that there is a proposal for a judicial review coming out of View Royal, but that's not something that we are compelled to do. And the law does compel us to enact this by June the 30th. There, as I understand it, there isn't any legislation that addresses getting it delayed in any manner. We haven't sought a delay in any manner. And the intention, as I understand it, was to meet the requirements of the legislation. And that's something that perhaps it's in decline recently, but it used to be a very important thing in the West and in North America. But we typically obey the law, and that's if we meet it, there are no ramifications. If we don't meet it, there could be ramifications. My point about the arm wrestle is that the province has has complete legislative control over the city. It does not, the city is not a constitutional body. It's the creature of the province, and the province can determine our role, obviously within the confines of the Constitution, but they do have the jurisdiction over municipal institutions in the province under Section 92 of our Constitution.
Okay, awesome, thanks. And then can you kind of reiterate that there's policies in here to increase the supply of new social and supportive housing and policies to support a city of renters. Knowing that there's probably not enough time, but just briefly.
I'll pass that to Dan.
Yes, the housing chapter includes policies around expanding the supply of social and rental housing, city for renters that works for renters, working with community housing sector to expand the supply of those types of housing, yes.
Okay, and then can you sort of talk about the comments around the lack of accessible housing and housing for seniors that was raised?
Yeah, I'd just say we're aware of those issues, obviously, and in the housing chapter, there are specific actions that direct us when we're doing planning work, both our housing needs assessment work and area planning work, putting housing policies in those plans to look at accessible housing, housing for seniors, housing for folks with disabilities, etc.
Okay, I think that's all my questions.
Thanks, Councillor. Okay. Clerk, did we receive any additional public comments since the close of public comments?
There was one additional comment received between the close of public comments, or within 15 minutes of the close of public comments. It has been circulated and posted.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, I see there's one paragraph there. That's fine. Thank you. So I'll remind Council that we need to move the recommendation for item 1 together with the yellow memorandum dated March 6, 2026, entitled City of Vancouver Official Development Plan Amendments to ODP, and one dated March 10th, 2026, entitled City of Vancouver Official Development Plan Amendment to the ODP Generalized Land Use Designation at 800 Commercial Drive. Council will now make its decision on this application. Moved by Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Kirby-Yung. Council members, is there any discussion? Yeah, we're back on the. All right. Councillor Meisner. I'm sorry. Okay. Try it again.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the discussion tonight. I have a somewhat administrative amendment that I've sent it to the clerks, and this is around the regional context statement.
Councillor Meisner, if you don't mind, we just had a little bit of.
That's okay, Chair. I was going to speak to the main piece, so I'm happy
Okay.
if you want to
All right.
reorder the
Go
queue.
right
and
ahead.
just let
Sorry,
Councillor
Councillor.
Meisner do the amendment, and then I'll
No confusion
come back
here.
and speak.
And all right.
Sorry.
Councillor Meisner, you
No
can
worries.
start over. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem. So I just sent in an amendment to the clerks, and this is around the regional context statement in reference to the West Sucken project that we recently approved. So hoping you could take us to the amendment queue on that.
Thanks very much. Okay. So just add you here. Okay. You're on the amendment queue now.
Yes. So I also had the same question as Councillor Dominato around that project since we recently approved it. And since tonight's ODP hearing includes the regional context statement, I wanted to move an amendment on it. And this will change, as we approved in the recent public hearing, the proposed use of the property in the regional context statement from industrial to general urban. So it's fairly administrative, but I wanted to ensure that happens considering we just recently approved the project.
Thanks very much. Okay. So can I get a seconder? Councillor Zhou? Okay. Council, before we vote, I just need to check. Councillor Bly, I saw you come on later this evening. Have you, I know you requested a summary. Did you watch last night's proceedings as you were absent last night?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I was going to raise that on the main queue, that due to the LOA last night and the 3.5 hours of speakers, I've gotten through half of it, but not the balance. And there are no notes to summarize those speakers, as I understand from the clerks. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of options if we're going to vote on this final ODP tonight. My hope was we were going to do it tomorrow, and as we have a reserve. So I'll defer to the clerks and the chair. I do want to participate and got through almost half of them, but yeah. I have been on tonight, but it's last night that there are no summaries for.
I see. One moment. Yeah, the clerk advises me that therefore you'll be ineligible to vote on this item tonight, Councillor. So thanks for clarifying that. All right. So going back to this item, so I guess we will call the vote now on this item. This is the amendment. And
Sure.
Mayor Sim?
Chair, can I get a vote assist in favor, please?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Okay. And that passes with all present in favor. Okay, so we'll go back to now the main queue. Councillor Meisner, do you have further comments?
I'll come back on in a moment. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm going to provide sort of some overall comments on this since we're now at that point in the proceedings. And first of all, I want to thank staff for a really comprehensive, clear presentation. I know it's a lot of information and it's been the culmination of a lot of work, so I appreciate that. I'm also grateful to all the speakers who have come and demonstrated their singular passion for Vancouver and the neighborhoods. I want to reflect back some of what I think the ODP does and what it doesn't do. And I think I have the ability to speak from a bit of perspective on this since I was on council last term when we went through the initiative of the Vancouver plan. And then also on this term when that was transitioning into translating the Vancouver plan into and now ODP. So I can say that that's happened over a substantive period of time, almost 8 years now, and there has been a lot of engagement along the way. I think what I have heard often on council is people wanting to be vested in their city, but struggling to understand the broader picture, frustrated at what is perceived sometimes as spot rezonings, looking for clarity and an ease of access to information about what is the plan for my city? How is Vancouver going to continue to evolve, retain the great essence of what it is? But how do I get my arms around all of that? And I think our staff described this as a formalization of land use, a vision for Vancouver, and a North Star. And I think what has quite honestly been a significant gap and has been missing is a comprehensive, consolidated articulation of what that looks like for the land use. I think the map that was provided, which is on page 14 of the staff presentation, is, if you have to point to anything, is a really great summary that showcases the intended distributed growth and the diversity of housing in our city in a very digestible visual way. And it's quite noteworthy to sort of look at how parks and green space are delineated, where there's residential multiplex, where the mid-rise is envisioned to come in. And I am excited that we do have now, although I know, again, it's a lot to get your arms around in this GLU or the general land use, a vision for how we will start to infill in that distributed growth. I think what Vancouverites have said loud and clearly that they want is choices. And a diversity of typologies in the city. And that's actually what we're really moving towards now. Council has moved away from single family zoning. We now have multiplex that's permissible now in the city. We've had some higher density. And what is exciting now, I think, is the opportunity to bring in and provide the other choices. It's important to clarify, and it's great to hear from the public in terms of the questions that came up. It gives us an opportunity as councillors to ask questions and to clarify that this does not adopt any new zoning. And I'll say that again. It does not adopt any new zoning. It simply brings everything in to one cohesive, clear vision and presentation. I do believe that it will have positives such as streamlining and delivering housing faster. I believe it provides a clarity that has been lacking. I believe that as the city's, the largest, most populous city at the moment, although I know Surrey's vying for that title, but right now we hold it, that we do need to have a plan that articulates and lays that out. I also think too that this might be a bad analogy, but if you're cooking a meal, you're trying to get dressed and you can't find all your ingredients or all the parts of your outfit, when you have all these disparate plans that are not coherently brought together, it's very difficult to achieve that outcome. Now we actually have one thing that we can all be working towards. And whenever we're considering things like parks and green space in terms of the ability for other acquisition, and we're looking at where we can sort of achieve sort of additional, some of those missing middle housing typologies, everybody is looking at the same thing. And that is really important because it allows, I think, everybody to kind of have that foundational commonality with all of our disparate teams in driving forward. So I think that there's a lot of positives to this. I will say that I think it's been a good exercise to go through and clarify all of the questions there. I think that we will grow regardless. Some of those population trends will be changed by some of the other components, but I think that this in balance is a well-articulated vision, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm going to cede the chair to Deputy Mayor Kirby Young and advance myself. Thanks very much. First of all, just appreciation to
Sarah,
staff.
Do we normally cede to the acting mayor? Just declared. Oh, you are. Sorry.
Sorry. There you go.
I'm sorry. The hour is late. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry. Timer again. Anyway, so first of all, I just want to thank staff. This was a towering piece of work in the sense that it had a lot of components to it, and it also had the commensurate responsibility of responding to the provincial legislation. One speaker suggested that we defy the province. The town of View Royal, I checked, it's a bedroom community in the Capital Regional District with a population of 13,000. The largest city in the province would probably not be in a good position to start taking this. I think that what we're doing is responsible in terms of being able to meet the needs that the province has brought forward here. And what has been stated repeatedly and responded to by staff when asked, this does not change the zoning one bit. What it does not do is it does not ignore experts. It brings in a lot of thoughtful responses from many groups and individuals who are helping us to understand how we're going to be able to move our city forward. It responds to concerns around affordability in a way that I think a lot of people are very concerned about. It does not drive chain stores and cold gray corridors. It creates a vibrant streetscape that will have local small businesses. It does not lower public engagement. In fact, it enhances it and ensures it for the future. It doesn't challenge our beloved tree canopy. In fact, it embraces it and makes sure that it remains for generations to come. It does respond to population growth, and notwithstanding the fact that immigration has been pulled back significantly due to the choices made in the federal government, ultimately that will change over time because as a country, we need to make sure that we continue to be able to grow. It responds to the need to be age-friendly. As a city, we're aging demographic, and our communities need to be ready for older communities. It does look 30 years into the future, and I think that's what the real responsibility of this council is, any council is to be thinking about next generation and families being able to live, work in this community. It does not obliterate streets as a term, and I just want to respond to the nature of the comments, and I think that everybody who called in with, I think, a great deal of passion and love for our city, and I think that same passion and love for the city is held by every member of this council chamber and our staff, and we all want to make sure that City of Vancouver continues to be an incredible city, and that means that we're going to be advancing thoughtful planning for our communities. We're going to densify nodes around Oak Ridge, the downtown, the Broadway area, and then we're going to start to see other places. We're going to make them more age-friendly by making sure that services and amenities are available within walking distance in a lot of parts of our city. It's really hard, and what the ODP does not do is it does not effectively respond to the kind of confusion and information that gets people really angry. And I hope that if anything can be taken from this decision tonight, and that people who are listening and following this item closely, is that I think that this is a positive step forward that protects our city and makes sure that it is thoughtfully built for the future. And it is not something where we're taking a step back. We're all working very closely, and we'll have the ability, as this council and future councils will have the ability to make sure that this plan continues to evolve in a way that the City of Vancouver wants and embraces. So again, thanks very much to all who did call in and came into the chamber tonight, and to staff and council for their very thoughtful questions and comments tonight. Thank you. And I'll now bring forward Councillor Chor, and I'll take the chair back. Thank you. Councillor Orr.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I also want to acknowledge the concerns that people have raised about this plan. It's big, it's scary, it's a huge document. But again, I like my fellow colleagues here, I do want to be clear about what I think this document is, from what my understanding is, from what I've heard. It's a high level framework. It's not a mass rezoning of the city. It doesn't replace the normal processes we use to evaluate individual projects. Staff are asked directly whether neighborhood level planning changes And the answer was no. Those processes remain the same. And again, like my fellow colleagues, we're required to have a plan like this. So, as we just heard, municipalities in British Columbia operate under provincial legislation, and we are creatures of the province. The province can amend the legislative framework, what governs cities, if we refuse to comply. They hold the cards in this relationship. So part of the reality here is making sure Vancouver has a credible plan in place. What I heard this plan does is set a growth pattern that is more permissive and distributed across the city, and that we have for a long time concentrated enormous amounts of growth in a few areas, downtown and a handful of hubs, which has put huge pressure on infrastructure. This plan creates new opportunity across more neighborhoods, which could help growth happen more evenly. And we heard that the lion's share is low to mid scale. We're facing a housing crisis. One of the questions for me is that whether this framework helps remove barriers so housing can be built more expediently. And on page 75, it says it will enable social, supportive, and purpose-built rental housing off major streets in your transit, parks, schools, and other amenity services. I think this is good. Let's look at my time. There are policies to increase the supply of new social and supportive housing, policies to support the city of renters, as I heard. I'm going to take your word for it. The ODP also widens the berth for all types of housing tenures, low-rise, townhomes, mid-rise, non-market housing. Affordability comes from having a system that can produce housing at many different scales. On neighborhood character, we heard that the plan organizes growth by scale and mobility, that higher intensity around downtown and rapid transit, moderate growth around frequent transit and smaller scale villages elsewhere. On the population projections, we heard that staff described a hybrid model using city data, BC stats, Metrovan, and development pipeline information. The truth is that those projections are never wrong, and that they will be updated 5 years at a time. And then finally, the ODP identifies amenity needs at a high level, but it doesn't build them itself. The detailed work happens through capital planning, policies like development cost charges, and community and amenity contributions and strategies like Van Play. So I support moving forward with this with caution, and recognizing that this is a framework that we can amend over time. And this is not the final word on how Vancouver grows. So that's why I'll be supporting.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zhou.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So also want to appreciate all the works from the planning department, from all the staff. I know there are hours work behind, so that take us to where we are tonight. Also want to appreciate all the speakers. I understand how passionate our residents are, and we all want to have a better city for all the residents. I want to articulate my position first. I want to support this ODP, not only because of it is mandated by the province as the Bill 18. More importantly, I think it's very critical for the residents of our city. You know, when we talk about this official development plan, we are really talking about the future of Vancouver. I understand the concerns from the residents. I hear you, but I want to see that cities are never static. They grow, they evolve, and they should respond to the needs, the people who live in them. Our responsibility as a council is not only to respond to today's challenges, but also to plan thoughtfully for the next generation. As we heard from staff yesterday, according to the Vancouver plan and also the projection, the population in the city will be almost 1 million people. That's 300,000 additional people increase from today, which means about more than 10,000 people net new increase every year on average. I understand the immigrants has been slowing down in recent years because of the federal government's policy, but we are talking about 20 years, 30 years. Immigrant will be open again for sure, and we need immigrants for this city, for our country. And as we heard, the ODP will be updated every 5 years to reflect all the changes. So I'm confident that the ODP will be, providing very active reflection of what we need in our city. Vancouver is facing real pressures. housing affordability, population growth, climate change, and also we need stronger and more resilient communities. An ODP provides long-term vision and a framework to get how our city grows. When homes are built, when our neighborhoods evolve, when infrastructure keep pace, and how we protect the qualities that make Vancouver as one of our best city on this planet. So I think ODP will help us achieve that. Good planning is always about balance. It means creating more housing opportunities while maintaining livable neighborhoods. It means supporting economic vitality while ensuring sustainability. It also means making sure that our city grows, but it remains inclusive and accessible for people from all walks of life. And it supports, and also this ODP supports building all forms of housing faster, as what we heard yesterday, especially building more affordable housing faster in our city. We can't live in the past. Vancouver is very different compared to 20, 30 years ago. Vancouver will be different in the next 20, 30 years. Regardless you like or not, it is a fact. The decision we make today will shape Vancouver for decades to come. This plan helps provide certainty for residents, for business, for future councils, and also for the very important social services in our city, like healthcare. It's about ensuring that growth happens in a thoughtful, coordinated, and responsible way. So supporting this work means supporting a future Vancouver that is vibrant, resilient, and welcoming. So for all those reasons, I support this Vancouver ODP. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Meisner. Oh, you're muted, Councillor.
Apologies.
Go right ahead.
I also want to thank everybody for their engagement tonight, to our staff for all the work on this ODP, and especially to all the speakers who shared their feedback. From my perspective, adopting this ODP is part of addressing our housing crisis by being clear on how we want to guide development of new housing in our city over the next few decades, and by creating a variety of homes from affordable to market, homes for families, homes for seniors, in neighborhoods across the city that are walkable, that have quality community centers, parks, transit, and other amenities. Adopting this ODP will give certainty to those who build homes, and also for neighbors in our neighborhoods, who will now have a clearer idea of how their neighborhood will evolve. As mentioned tonight, adoption of the ODP is provincially mandated by June 30th, so we are cutting it pretty close. It will formalize the Vancouver plan, which has been under development for many years and underwent extensive consultation. The ODP is also going to incorporate recent planning principles, including increased density around TOAs, multiplex neighborhoods in the city, and also villages of walkable communities. Arbutus Village was mentioned several times by speakers as a shining example of sustainable village-style high-density development in our city. And this ODP is going to enable other Arbutus Village neighborhoods around the city. And I think that's a great thing. And as mentioned tonight, adopting this ODP does not adopt any new zoning. It simply brings all our plans into one overarching document and plans for how our city will grow in a thoughtful and inclusive way. So for these reasons, I'm supportive of adopting the ODP tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Fry.
Wow, everybody's got great ending statements. I'm a little rusty. I think I might even be coming down with a cold. It's been a grind, but I really appreciate all the folks who have engaged in this process and really care a lot about our city. I think we all care about our city. I really want to thank staff. You guys did an amazing job. Lil, you were a rock star taking that all, but you guys all did amazing. But I really have to commend Lil for taking a lot of questions and thinking on the feet quickly. You guys all do. But anyway, I'm exhausted. This has been quite a process. As has been mentioned many times, we are legally obliged to do this, so there's a lot of pressure to deliver on this, and I think it's actually, on the whole, despite all the fears and some of the consternation around this, is a remarkable document. This is, literally and figuratively a landmark moment for Vancouver. This is establishing a vision for this land that we call home, the context, the history, the reconciliation, the natural history, the hopes and dreams, and everything that we share and think about this place and this land. You know, this ODP represents years of policy and hard work and public engagement, and it also represents clarity and purpose. And I think that's really, for me, the takeaway is that the future, even though it's written, the future is unwritten. We've just laid the foundational piece, and this is a really I'm very proud of this work that you guys have done. I shouldn't be proud of your work, but but I do appreciate the work that you've done, and I'm proud to be able to vote in favor of this. So I will say that. Thank you,
Councillor Maloney.
Thanks. I appreciate the excellent comments of my council colleagues, and nice off the cuff statement by Councillor Fry about the significance of this moment. I will be voting in support of staff's recommendations to adopt this official development plan for Vancouver. I think it's really useful to have a single source of information about how the city is planned to grow and change. As a relatively recent newcomer to this city, I find this official development plan to be a really useful reference document to incorporate the complicated layers of planning history in this city, if nothing else. And I'll repeat Councillor Kirby-Young's statement that this does not adopt any new zoning. I'm looking forward to this official development plan being amended to allow more missing middle and low-rise housing options in more areas, because we do need more accessible, affordable housing options in every neighbourhood, but that's coming, and this is a good start. And I really do understand the fears and concerns raised by the approximately 80 public speakers that have come to council during this public hearing, as well as all the people that have written to us and the people involved in the public consultation over a number of years. I'm satisfied that the serious and legitimate concerns raised by the community have been clearly addressed by staff, and I want to sincerely congratulate you on your work. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. All right, Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Chair. Echoing what you've already heard from my colleagues is an immense thanks to our staff team who've worked tirelessly on this file for some time. And we heard from former Councillor Adrienne Carr speaking to the genesis and early days of the Vancouver plan and the evolution of that to where we are today around the ODP. And I also want to acknowledge, like my colleagues, all of the residents who came in person, as well as those who called in and spoke to the plan. And there were different perspectives, as were outlined on all sides of this. And I would say, I'm not going to say a lot. I always say that, then Councillor Fry says I say a lot. But my colleagues have really done a fantastic job of reflecting in their own words what we heard from the public. I want to say that there was some criticism when it was articulated this was an aspirational plan, but I've never worked in an environment where you don't have aspiration. You have to have aspiration. You have to have vision, and you know the adage of you know the lacking a plan is a failure is. I'm sorry, I'm so tired right now, but. I've never worked in an environment where you don't have a plan to lay the groundwork for where you're going, but you do have to have a vision. And the ODP consolidates a number of plans, as we heard. But when I look at it, I see it as a layered strategy and plan. And people talked about how you've got the high-level land use components, the neighborhood types, the transit network, parks, and ecology. But what I like about that is it provides the clarity and certainty, not only for the development community, because often that came up in the conversations. This is about development and about housing, but there's so much more to this, which is touching on parks and ecology and open spaces and how people move around, and underpinning it there, we have separate zoning and land use policy that contributes to this. But what I think is incredibly valuable in all of this is that it lays the groundwork for not just today, but for the future. It also signals very clearly to the public what we care about. And so whether it be the different types of housing topology, whether it be about the employment lands, whether it be about having green space and parks and protecting ecological sensitive areas, the ODP does all of that. And I think the last comment I'll make is there was a lot of anxiety I heard from the public, concerns about this. And it's very hard to follow a strategy like this that started almost 7 years ago in terms of the Vancouver plan and the evolution to today. And I know change can be scary, but we also can't live in a plan. This will have to be dynamic. And I think that's the other sort of takeaway for me and all the comments I heard is that the city is dynamic. This lays the groundwork, but at the end of the day, I anticipate there'll be a myriad of changes going forward as the city evolves, as new issues emerge. And so I'm really happy to endorse the ODP, and I actually think that at the end of the day, people will find it. It's not quite as scary as they think in terms of changes to their neighborhoods. And as my colleagues articulated, there are some really good examples of great urban planning and development and change in the city. And so I am happy to support it, and thank you for staff's work on it.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Okay. A reminder that any council member participating virtually whose video is disabled will be marked absent by the vote pursuant to section 1413 of the procedure bylaw. I'm now going to call the vote. Clerk, can you please take us to the voting screen?
Chair, can I please get a vote assist in favor, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Mayor. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So that passes with all available to vote in favor. That completes the agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Second? Councillor Maloney, second. Thanks very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. And thank you, staff.
Thank you, everyone.